Milne, haven't seen too much of your beautiful mug on Instagram Lives. What have you been doing with yourself?
Isolating. Yeah, I've been enjoying the peaceful time. To be honest, it's a lot of people are going stir crazy, but there's an element of actually just enjoying not being anywhere, not doing anything. I had a terrible cold just as it was all kicking off, and so I couldn't go and see the trade for a bit of a last thank you and goodbye, because I thought no one would want a man coughing and spluttering in their bar. So yeah, I've been enjoying life bunkered down for a while.
A couple of people tuning in on Facebook, Dave and/or Caroline Taylor down in Tassie. Good to see you there. And someone who I know quite well, shares a last name with me, Craig Fitzsimons, is, hey guys, how's it going? Drinking plenty of Harn Ice beer down in Victoria in my shed. I reckon, Craig, that's a pretty good place to be.
Pretty good place to be.
Yeah. Harn Ice or no Harn Ice, sitting in the shed is not a bad little idea at the moment. So this is a little bit free form tonight. We're just going to sort of talk about whiskey as it is now. Obviously, I think it'd be pretty hard not to talk about whiskey in a COVID-19 era, because it is impacting everything. But I think what we want to get to is, in times like this, let's talk about whiskies that we love, that rely upon, not necessarily the most obscure single cask of all time. Sorry, Scotch Malt Whisky Society, but just like stuff that you can go back to that's there every time. But before we jump into that very, very quickly, I do want to address something that's going around at the moment, news about liquidators being appointed at a certain South Australian whiskey distillery. We're aware of it. It's been circling the industry for a couple of days now, and it's sort of seeping out into public knowledge. I'm not part of any of those businesses, neither of the people on the stream here are any part of those businesses. So yes, we are aware of it. It's not our business to talk about it. We're not going to speculate on it. We're going to let that one play out, because it would be highly irresponsible to start speculation and innuendo. And honestly, we don't know. It's not our business. So hopefully that can come to a good conclusion. Liquidators aren't always the end of the world for things, but yeah, we are aware of that. But Matt Bailey, what are you drinking? I hope it's whiskey.
It is whiskey. I don't have anything. You wanted me to pick something that's sort of we talked about. I'm going to just rewind a little bit, because when I spoke to Scotty earlier today, you said something about how might pick out a whiskey that was sort of part of our formative years in whiskey, something that was maybe like a daily drinker. That, I mean, these days I drink a lot of Scotch Malt Whisky Society product, but I do occasionally dabble in other products, of course, because I love what other distilleries and like other releases are, and I love knowing what's going on, of course. But I decided to pick out, I've got a grain whiskey and a blended whiskey and a single cask. I don't know where to start. What are you guys having? I need to know where you guys are going to start as well. I'm going to start with the whiskey. I'm going to start with the grain whiskey. It's perfectly on brand, I understand. And the reason why I'm going to drink grain whiskey, it's a 29-year-old grain, is because Scotty said don't drink an obscure single cask, and I'm going to go against the rules straight off the bat, and I don't care. So
Matt Bailey slumming it with 29-year-old single casks in isolation.
It's one of those everyday drinkers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a daily drinker. Yes, that's true. But it's the reason why I'm going to start with the grain is because I think grain whiskey, and I've talked about this before, is criminally underrated, and I think that grain whiskeys are often overlooked to their malt counterparts as being less complex or less interesting or whatever. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And so I'm going to start with a grain whiskey.
Yeah. And before I throw to Milne there, I'm going to actually reveal what I'm drinking. And it's not because you're here, Milne, it's one of your brands, but it's Starward Twofold. So there is a bit of grain influence there as well. So grain is God. Yeah.
And actually, you know what? Actually, live right now is David talking about. So you know what? There's actually 3 people talking about Twofold right now online. There you go.
Taking over the world, one dram at a time.
We love it. We love to see it. Milne, what are you drinking?
Exactly the same. Twofold and tonic right now.
Twofold and tonic.
Yeah.
That was unplanned. Yeah. And g'day to Craig jumping in on the Zoom there as well. I mean, it's one of the things that in times, obviously what the world is going through now is unprecedented, and I promise that's the only time I'm going to say the word unprecedented tonight. But there are times when, in worlds of great optimism, you want to go home and drink a whiskey that you just know what you're going to get. You don't want to think about it. I mean, we are all in the very, very privileged position of working full-time in whiskey. So sometimes when you get home, or like you're out at a bar, you don't necessarily want to drink something that's complex and, you really think about because you've spent all day doing that. So, I mean, it's always been Jameson for me. Just love it. Nice and soft, lots of grain. When Twofold came out, 2 years ago now, Christ, that was good. Price point, bang for buck. And as you say, you're mixing it with tonic.
Yeah, I'm going to say with you, I think grain is massively underrated. And I think, you talk about Jameson, it's always been, so Green Spot was my go-to for years, because it's that same thing. You've got that nice bit of grain in there. It's fresh, it's fruity. Every sort of Bucks that I used to go to, that was the bottle that came with me, because everyone just went, yeah, this is bloody good. This is easy. It didn't offend anyone. It wasn't difficult. And like you say, we spend a lot of time talking and drinking fancy stuff, but I don't drink to just be, serious all the time. It's actually just, let's shoot the shit and just have,
it's a social drink. It's like we're doing now. It's a social drink.
Yeah.
You can just pour it in a glass and enjoy.
You just, you want it like a crisp beer. You want a crisp whiskey that's just like, it's clean, it's fresh, it's fruity. Let's not fuck around and be all, poncy and, single cask stupidness.
Here we go. Here we go.
Sorry, let's do it. I got 9 minutes. All right.
Yeah, fine. First jab. You know what? I'll find that opening. Don't worry.
It was, for everyone playing at home, there was a bit of who should be on the round table. And it's like, well, we need Matt Bailey because we need a punching bag. Like, we just need an outlet to throw hate and vitriol at.
No, don't worry. I've got a thick skin. It's fine.
Yeah.
Because what's nice is on my screen, he's at the bottom. And it's you and I, and he's just there. So we're just sort of directing our anger.
Wait a second. You're at the bottom on my screen.
I know. They've clearly got a glitch there.
That's right. I've got the power. I can just mute him at any point. So that's beautiful. One thing I want to pick up on is one word you said. I forget you said it, but it's being social, and it's so weird to come across a whiskey and be like, oh, that's really good social whiskey when all whiskey should be social. I know that a couple of years ago I moved out of a house where I had two other housemates who were big on whiskey. One was my business partner in whiskey at the time, and happy birthday Yvette for the weekend as well. But then moved into a house that had no interest in whiskey, and my domestic consumption went through the floor because it was sort of sitting around going, oh, this is great. Who do I tell? And then there was no one to tell. And it's like, if a Port Ellen gets opened in a forest and no one drinks it, did it really get opened? So.
Yeah. Yes. What's the answer to that?
I don't think there is now. It's just, I think, like, we get, and this is what I think a lot of people have been missing is, we've all got excellent whiskey collections at home, but if you're drinking it by yourself, God, that's boring.
Yeah.
And I found it quite interesting to hear someone describe then a whiskey as a social whiskey when it should be all whiskey. And I totally get that the price of things these days is so extreme that, $100 is a lot of money, and for a lot of people, whiskey it's a luxury. So that concept, and, I've been guilty of it as well. Get some mates come home, after something, and you go look through the shelf and you go, oh, what can we open? You go, oh shit, do I like them, that much? Do I like these assholes enough to open that? And you go, well, hold on. I've been the biggest champion of not thinking like that, but I do know what it cost me. And so, it sucks a bit like that.
Yeah. I think it's easier with whiskey. It's harder with wine. I always find that sort of real tough. Certain bottles of wine, you're like,
because if you open that bottle of wine, you've got to drink it.
Yeah. At least you can just give them one whiskey, and then it's like, okay, let's change it up and move around. But you do it with wine, it's just like, shit, that's it. It's gone.
I'm looking forward to when we do some virtual wine tastings here at the Oak Barrel and send everybody 6 bottles of wine to taste, and then like log off after an hour. See these poor bastards try and plow through 6 bottles of wine on the one night. No, we're coming up with some better ideas than that, I promise you.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, how you going?
But yeah, obviously you're doing a bit of Twofold on brand as you'd expect. How have I mean, because Southtrade does a lot with venues and things to, go a little bit peek behind the industry curtain with every restaurant and bar in the country shut down.
Yeah.
That must have huge implications for your business. And, I guess working so hard to get things like twofold, not only on a whiskey menu, but onto a cocktail menu, which is not, you fight all year for that. You have to wait till they redo their cocktail menu with a new product. Bang, it comes out and then shoop, rug, gone. Not particularly a pretty time out there, I don't think.
No, it's it's a horrid time, and it's from our side, we've you work hard to get everything going out there, and we're now obviously going to see all our sales drop off the end, but it's more heartbreaking just to see the businesses that have put so much work in, and there's they're just trying to keep on, and it's day by day we're just hoping that those that can stay because as a colleague of mine said to me the other day, I said, John, I really hope that's not the last time I go into that bar, because that would be devastating. And it's a horrid thing to think, but it's just really tough because we have no idea when the timeline is, and it's sort of mentally it must be really hard for the entire on trade, because it's not a case of it's this period to this period. You got to wait it out, and you can work that out and go I remember when I first moved here, I was unemployed, and the hardest thing is not knowing when that paycheck will come. And it's if it's a certain date, then it's you work to that, but it's mentally draining just being like, well, I don't know when the pay is going to come back into my account.
It's it's unfathomable. We've run out of hyperbole for it all, I guess. But keep on keeping on. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but yesterday I had a very, very good delivery from a mutual friend, I'm sure.
Very, very good delivery.
Of PS40 cocktails, bottled cocktails, which I thought was excellent. And it was the most bizarre thing because, I had one last night and it was just like, this is alcohols put together by someone who knows what they're doing, not me. And then, we're drinking them out of mugs, and you sort of mentally think, okay, this is, Scotty's Red Bull and vodka or whatever he's come up with that night. But then you drink it, and it's like the most complex cocktail you've ever had come from PS40, and you just have to go really quick. It was like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that.
That is one of the big differences I've seen. If I can just jump in there, there's some big differences I've seen in the trade at the moment, especially for on premise. There's been quite a lot who have adapted very, very quickly, and pivoted very quickly to whether it be whiskey pouches, cocktails in bottles, whatever it be. They've adapted to creating something special to engage their audience, and it's been fantastic to see. And I mean, some obviously had closed very quickly after announcements and probably won't come back, and some have adapted very quickly to go, you know what, we want to see the way through this, and we know that our patrons will. So,
100%.
I was chatting to Kate from Isabel down here in Bondi, and she's done exactly that. She's created cocktails that are incredible. She even created the highball before the licensing came in. She created the mixtures, and you just add the spirits. So she's like, here's a highball mix. Just add gin, vodka, whiskey, whatever to the mix. And she's doing amazing ramen as well, which is great because there's never been anywhere decent doing ramen around here. So I've got my ramen fix and homemade cocktails by a legend. So
and I think from all of us, us in the industry, but everyone who's enjoys good drinks, whatever they are, it's going to be very vital to get back out and support them when things do turn around. And there's going to be hesitation and things, which you totally understand, but there will hopefully be new business models and that sort of thing that you can celebrate and help support these businesses when it all sort of turns around. I think it's also worth pointing out, like we're talking about whiskey here tonight, and as a whiskey drinker, what do I care about a cocktail bar? But as we know, if you look at a venue, an on-premise venue that's selling, the margin is not coming from the whiskeys; it's coming from the things around it and other drinks and cocktails and stuff help empower venues to create those amazing back bars that we love. So it's all intrinsically tied together.
It is. It's all it is all intrinsically tied, and there's no sort of like one saves the other. It's sort of like that. It's all one piece, and you hit the nail on the head there, saying that for most bars, whiskey is not their bread and butter. It's their it's certainly not. It's cocktails and food, and that's why it's finding that balancing point of how that can support what they're doing later is so important.
A quick g'day to some people jumping in on Facebook, to Robert Akers, who I think is just following you around at this point, Bailey. Joel Eastman, Michael Wayland coming in saying g'day. So let's talk about some whiskey.
Whiskey.
Yeah. So
I got one for you.
Are you still on the single grain, Matty?
I'm just near the bottom of it.
That's always a good thing. Do you want to talk about, when we mentioned Twofold a little bit, my whiskey of the year 2 years ago?
2018.
Yeah, 2018. I love this whiskey, but we do actually have someone who is paid to talk about this whiskey. So go on. In isolation, and you keep, Milne.
You just need to tune into Dave Vitale.
Everyone, get on Instagram and look at Dave Vitale's speech and see how good he goes against the founder.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I was listening to him just before I came on, and one thing I didn't know is that he's actually started this a lot longer than, as an industry, we thought he had. So obviously this came out in 2018, the back end of 2018. Before that, 2013 was the first release from Starward with Solera, and then Nova in 2015. But what I didn't realize is 2011, when they first started everything, at that point, they were already starting to lay down grain and already started playing with it back then, which I clearly just erased from my memory at some point, or just wasn't told. But it fascinates me that it was a 7-year project to actually get from ideation to actually getting it right and getting it to the point of making it. As you say, it's roughly 60% grain, 40% malt. A long time of playing around and experimentation to get to it. As you said, some people refer to it as a blended whiskey. David loves to call it double grain. The States, it's a wheated whiskey technically. It's all around the world has got different ideas and different mindsets of what this is. And I think wheated whiskey in America sounds quite premium over here. When you bring a wheated whiskey, you think to some of the bits behind me here that are American wheated whiskeys that definitely charge high box.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to get a texture and change that double grain to wheated and just put the price up a little bit on the back shelves there. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea.
Good one.
It was actually interesting you said that, because even though it was bubbling under the surface, and I think people who worked at the distillery knew about it, and maybe if you saw some weirdly numbered casks. But I first found out about this, that it was coming, was at Whisky Fair in 18, which is at the end of August.
Yeah.
And Dave was there in his last show before he went over to the States, and he sort of said, "Oh mate, like something's coming," and it's a double grain. Like don't tell anyone. And I love that idea that it was, we are going to make a splash when we come, rather than leaking out information across the years. And then I guess you have that external pressure from consumer going, "Mate, I heard about this. When's it coming?" And it gives you that leeway and that breathing space to make it correct.
Yeah, of course. As soon as you make an announcement, you then have to deliver on that announcement. And there's a lot of experimentation that doesn't work, and there's a lot of things that we've and rightly so, we should be experimenting and playing around, but there's a lot that doesn't come good. And rather than just going, well, we said we'd do this, so here you go, here's an average bottle of something because we said we'd do it. It's just like, nah, let's kill it, cull it, re-rack it, do whatever is required, and cross that off the board and start again.
Yeah. And in that spirit, Matt Bailey's about to reveal all the society's plans for the next 12 months and every cast that's coming up.
Well, it's actually funny. I just latched onto what Andy said about experimentation, and we've had our heresy releases coming out over the last 2 years, which has been about the same time as, I guess, maybe Well, our first Heresy was beginning of 2018, I think, which was Exotic Cargo, which was the fully blended malt. And then there's another one, Coma, which is coming out next month. And they're meant to be cheaper, more accessible, more fun, sort of just like quaffable drinks that we produce. They're not single cask. They're all blended malts.
What's totally against what you're doing? Surely, why would you do that?
I
know.
What even is the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society anymore?
It's not what it used to be, that's for sure.
Did I see the word Scotch on a bottle of Japanese whiskey?
Yeah.
Scotch on a bottle of American whiskey.
That's right. Actually, we've got some great American whiskeys coming soon as well, so that's exciting. But look, there was discussion at one point about changing the name, but it had such an identity, so it didn't seem worth it. There you go. But all sorts of Heresy releases, experimentations, and things like weird cask treatments, and we've actually got a what was it? It was it's a society whiskey coming out, a single cask that is a 8-year-old single cask that was fully matured in an ex-society rum cask. So one of our Jamaican rums that was then used to mature one of our Scotch whiskies. So things like that, which I find extremely exciting, to be able to track that lineage throughout time. And there's lots of things like that coming through the next 12 months. So I can sort of answer that question, Scotty, but not really.
I just on that point, and also Blake Schill is joining the Andy Milne fan club on Facebook there. So, certainly there's a favourite out of us three, and Bailey, it's not you and it's not me. But just, this is maybe not a question I should ask you on air, Matt, but speaking like a month or 6 weeks ago, you were doing a lot of work with people down in Melbourne for the beer festival coming up down there. Now, obviously that's been pushed back, but it's no secret when a whiskey company and a beer company get together, there's probably barrels involved or something like that. Yeah. So they would have a timeline that would have been pushed to a certain, or directed at a certain point. Do you have any updates on? Are you still like what's going to happen there?
It's actually accidentally good news in a way, because it's completely not intentional, because Gabs was coming up in May, and it was kind of like, well, we need those casks to be matured by May, but we had the casks shipped over. Well, I had to get them over from December just been, and it was like, well, if I air freight them, it's going to cost an arm and a leg. But if I sea freight them, I can get them here in 6 weeks, but won't be as much time in cask for the beer. And so there's always that worry that there's just not so much a worry, but that discussion with the brewery, like, is the beer going to be maturing in these casks long enough for us to really, is it going to have enough of an influence? But with the cancellation of the festival, it's like, well, we've sort of got a free timeline now of how long we can mature that beer, which is great, because it's kind of like an accidental good news, because it's like, well, now it's back in our hands, how long we're maturing it for. So just to give some context to that, we had 2 society single casks shipped over, 2 hogsheads shipped over from our warehouse in Glasgow, which are now maturing beer at Hop Nation in Melbourne. And it's a collaboration with Hop Nation, with Whisky and Almond, with Gabs, and with us. So it's a four collaboration there, and it's been tricky to get all the parties together. But it's very cool. One of them is an I don't know if I'm allowed to say the distilleries. It doesn't matter. Look, one of them's peated, one of them's not peated, and they're very exciting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was allowed to ask that question then. That's all.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
I didn't know how that was going to go. I didn't know whether it was a secret or not.
No, there's no secrets there. We're working on it still with them, but it's just with Gabs pushed out. It's like, well, we'll bottle the beer when it's ready now, rather than it reaches that date.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's not bad. And that probably means that people like the Oak Barrel might be able to get a look in on some allocations if there's not necessarily a big festival.
I think it's going to be basically 1 keg of each, and whatever's left over is getting put into can.
Okay, cool.
Which is great.
Nice.
Yeah. Because, as we know, the original way you drink whiskey is with a glass of Pinot Noir and a shot of whiskey. Is it Pinot Noir?
Did you say with a cold, crisp ale? Did you say it together?
Yeah, I think I said that. It might have come out as Pinot Noir, but, a cold, refreshing, fresh ale, crisp ale. Yeah, might work as well.
Yeah, cool.
Blakey Shield, before heading off, has said big beards deserve free shots, Milne. So, mate, I've just put down a $500 bar tab at Rover for you. Only valid for tonight. So if you can get there, go for your life on me.
I mean, it's not open, but it's a valid bar tab.
They better not be doing takeaway, otherwise I'm fucked.
If if I just get the key to myself, then I'm isolating still. So I think it's fair.
Do I isn't like theft is free? So do I like have to, pick up that tab at the end of the night if you're just blatantly nicking stuff?
I'll just make a note of what I drink and then pass that down.
Yeah, fair enough. Pass it on.
What are we talking about? Let's go and need another whiskey.
Yeah, I want to talk about what you're going to drink next. And also, if there is anyone who's drinking anything at home, feel free to share what you're drinking. Rob George Akers says Pinot Boilermaker, why not? Which is, 100%. I've been doing it for many years, mate. It works very, very well. Pinot Noir and Janet's is the key to a long, healthy, happy life. I've actually heard that there's some very smart scientists up in Queensland working on vaccines and things, and that Janet's and Pinot Noir might be the answer. It might save us all. So buy shares in that.
Shares.
I also just, I think Dave Vitale is off his stream because he's starting to like things on Facebook. I'm getting alerts for that. So Milne, it's just you now. You got the sole voice for Starward.
You got to represent now, Milne.
I get to see you repping the old school bullet glass as well, Bailey.
Yeah, look, I decided the second whiskey needs to be an old school blend because, again, Scotty asked me before, where did we come from? What was the part of our journey? And part of my journey was blended whiskey. This is an old Johnny Walker from the 90s, and I'm using an old school style blender's glass to appreciate it because it's low proof and these glasses. By the way, special shout out to Scotty. You actually sold me this glass, so there you go.
Yeah, I love them. They're great. They are absolutely excessive and ridiculous, but gorgeous. And I just think if you are walking through a Bond store or a barrel house or a rick house, whatever you want to call it, wherever you are in the world, it's not quite complete if you're not holding a wanky glass and having someone take photos of it. And just moves. And if you could just model this for me, but something like, but where you're actually looking at the camera, so it's quite obvious you're not actually drinking whiskey or smelling whiskey. Yep, that's the one. That's the money shot.
Yeah. Look, I'm an ambassador. I know that shot well. I've practiced. This is how it works. And don't forget, if you really want to wank it up, ready?
Oh, I know. I think you're really shot.
Pinky up.
Because it's Angus that came up with those guys.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's Angus McRail who's got one of his versions of this. I was just talking about it an hour ago. He's and he was actually, last time I saw Angus in person, he and I were wandering around Brooklady Distillery, and he was carrying this very glass with a sample of whiskey in it because that's just how he rolls. He
carries it everywhere he goes. It's great.
Really it's ridiculous.
When I was at Whisky Exchange, we helped put it all together. So the story is he'd been given a glass by Charles MacLean and kept hold of it and wasn't giving it up, and was determined to replicate it and said, this is amazing. This is 1920s style blender's glass. This is what we should be doing.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. And we ended up going to Glencairn and saying, look, can you put this together? Here's the idea, here's the concept. Are you up for it? And Angus was keen to do it for ages, but just it's a lot of money to commission the glass. And when you don't have the outlet to sell it to as well, it's even harder. So it was at the time that we were collaborating for Whisky Show Old and Rare that we kind of all got together and said, right, well, let's do this and put this together for you. So we kind of came and joined in the gang there. And the first round or first batch was actually pretty delicate. So you could be sort of swirling, and then all of a sudden the ball just
the head would fall off.
I do remember the first ones because the first ones had a really, really fine lip on them, and they were super delicate. And they were
super delicate to use.
Yeah, impossible to use.
A great use if you break the stem off the bottom of your glass. Turns out that signatory bottle tops are perfect for sitting around.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in quickly just to catch up on some comments on Facebook. Marco Grezza is on the Gabstead Pinot Noir with his lamb cutlets. That's a decent Boilermaker there. Rob Akers actually bailed early on Dave Vitale just to come in and watch you, Milne. Have that on good authority. Zeno's on a Matt B with a Johnny Blue. I'm not sure what a Matt B is apart from Bailey, so he's The Essence of Matt Bailey with a Johnny Blue. There you go. Mark Teague is on Dayu and Flora and Fauna, 16-year-old. Now, that is a whiskey. Yeah, that's definitely a whiskey. Steve Oates is drinking peppermint tea. Now, what I think he's done is basically caught himself a bouncer, grabbed himself by the shirt and thrown himself out of the frame. He's been kicked off there.
Spice it up. It's fine.
And Zeno's back when the SMWS and the Oak Barrel has events where he's getting that glass. We've been talking about this for a long time. We had one planned, right?
Yeah, we had an event planned this June actually.
It was going to happen.
Yeah.
And Mark T says the headline from tonight's Scotch Malt Whisky Society Instagram feed is Bailey says no to Nolan. I don't know what that means, but apparently that's it.
Nolan.
Oh, Nolan.
I panned the Nolan. Sorry.
He said, yeah. And that's the Nolan is like my first whiskey cup where you get the two handles, you get a nice big sip, and you just so you don't spill any. It's also the glass company that started to write a lot of articles on LinkedIn and Medium about very scientific things about what's the best glass. And then you Googled who the author.
No, Nolan.
That was Nolan.
It was Nolan.
And then you Googled who the author was and was like, CEO of Nolan Whiskey Glass. What a surprise. But yeah, anyway, so that's right.
He's the only he's the only glassmaker to wish me happy birthday every single year with a specialized template and everything. So,
that's nice.
I do. Obviously we're independent here, so I get to chat shit about whatever I want to chat about. And we do stock a fair bit of glassware here. Nolan's not one of them. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Rob Akers is bringing out the big gun, Starward Cognac cask. Haven't seen that for a little while. And I think actually, Milne, was it you that gave me a dram of that at Dramfest 2 years ago? Someone was carrying some.
I've never been to Dramfest.
Okay, it must have been Slats then. I don't know. I've been a couple of times, can never remember. But
it's before my time, definitely.
Yeah,
it's 2017, I think, at least.
Yeah, it would have been around that time. But yeah, cracking whiskey. Now, Milne, a lot of people who probably met you, seen you run tastings here and elsewhere with Southtrade. But as you sort of touched upon, you came from the Whisky Exchange in London, which is, I know, is a store that we all look up to, and that industry, obviously, being in the UK, is something that we aspire to. You've now been here for 2 years, is it?
Yeah. It was my 2-year anniversary last weekend, or this weekend.
Do you maybe want to give a bit of an insight for me, because this is something that I'm interested in as well. I'm sure Matt is as well. Just how you found adapting to a whiskey industry that's so far away from, particularly Scotch where it's made, and then we have our own flavor profiles and tastes and habits that we've developed over the last 100 years of drinking booze. Just how obviously the bottle store stuff are better looking, but just, beyond that, what you found in Australia.
Yeah, it's drink. This is where you call me out for saying horrid things now, but I think it's whiskey drinking habits across the world are so different, and I think whilst the Whisky Exchange based in the UK is one of the top retailers probably in the world, the customer base was global, not specific to the UK by any stretch, and it was actually mainland Europe that kind of carried us as a business for a long time. So it really came around when a lot of collectors in mainland Europe, the Dutch, the Belgians, the French, the Germans, the allocations, they couldn't get so much of the allocations. And so, when Seginder was setting up, he was like, all right, Hunter Lang were just starting out, and he was managed to get 50% of their allocation for the world. He's like, well, we're in the home of whiskey, so you give me the proper allocation. So it was a business of European customers more than UK customers predominantly, and just in Europe it was so variable. So mainland Europeans are obsessed about single casks and about premium 200-300 pound bottles of whiskey. It's like, yeah, cool, I'll buy that, I'll get into that. Whereas in the UK people are like, 60 pounds. It's like, fuck on. And so, that demographic of geek is actually a really small category. And it was, mainland, most of Scotland is very much just, I like my half and half. And it's just it's a Bell's, it's a Teachers, it's a Grouse. Was your staple, and upgrading beyond that was not that big of a thing. So whiskey culture in the UK changed massively in the time that I was in the industry.
The old £20 special from Tesco, mate. That's where it's at.
That's right.
Best whiskey in the world, isn't it? Aldi and Tesco whiskey. That's what I've heard. And I would not believe anyone but the Daily Mail, but that's what I've heard.
Andy, on your comment there, however, just to jump in there, Andy, you said that it's like that mainland European thing rather than just in the UK. When you would know this when you go to any of the festivals, like you look at Speyside Festival, you look at Facial or anything, it's all Europeans. It's all like it's all like Germans and Austrians and whatnot, all there, and they're all hunting out obsessive one-off releases.
And they come as groups, so it's even more entertaining when you see them at these festivals, because I obviously used to run the whiskey show in the UK, but I also used to help out with Elixir Distillers or Elixir House, who do Porter Elements of Islay, single malts of Scotland, and we used to go around to the shows. So we did Limburg, we did the one in we were doing Belgium, Paris, a few others in mainland Europe, but it's just the same people every single show. It's just like, hi again, how are you? And it was, I remember the first time my parents came to my whiskey show, and they were just completely amazed and shell-shocked that there's their little son wandering around running a show, and there's just a group of 40 Swedes just going, hi Andrew, hello. And then the Germans walk past again, and this is like this group of Germans 30, 40 strong, just like hello. This is like, and they love, they all come as a group or as a club. So there was a big club in Turkey. They always used to come together, and there was a big group in Poland. I was invited to Poland twice. No one wanted to pay for me, man. But I was invited there twice to go and chat with a group there. I was like, I don't know what expertise I've got compared to you guys. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do other than rock up and drink a lot of whiskey with some crazy Polish people that have a serious obsession to whiskey. So yeah, it's a different breed in Europe than what you get in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Just what you were saying about like Fischile, Matt, the big Islay festival. I wasn't at Fischile, but I was first time I was at Islay. I sort of just propped myself up in Port Ellen, stayed at bed and breakfast there, and so we spent a few most nights drinking at the Ardview Inn. But when I had a feed at it's the White Horse around the corner, near the close to where the Port Ellen distillery is on that side, and had a bit of fun and just sort of we're going back many years now. There was this group of Germans, about 4 of them, and I was at the bar. They're at the bar. I was by myself, so we got talking, found out I was working in the music industry as a journalist back in those days. And one of the sons or one of the daughters was some budding musician or something. I was like, yeah, mate, she'll be famous in Australia by the time I get home, don't worry. And I did not pay for another dram that night. And those boys were not mucking around. Like we went through some serious Ardbegs. I just remember some 70s Ardbegs that we just plowed through. And then I was like, oh, look, it's definitely my round. And they were just like, no. And it was almost that idea of buying some weird Australian, a couple of drams at the White Horse was going to be the story they were going to dine out on for the years to come. I was like, I'm happy to play that role. I'll do that.
Yeah. What are you drinking there, Scotty?
So I've moved on to actually not something that you get to see every day. I'm going to be a single cask wanker, but do
good man, single casks.
An Aston Morris Fettercan. Don't know if you can see that. Yeah, once it.
I've heard that's the best distillery in the world.
Mate, pull your head in. I reckon Fettercan has some excellent whiskies.
No. The joke is they released. This goes back to Dave Withers' days at Oak Barrel. Here you go. They released a whiskey, a core range Fettercan. It was released with a 10-year-old age statement that called itself on the front box the best whiskey in the world. On the front of the box. And I remember picking up this $65 10-year-old whiskey going, gee, that's quite a bold claim. And I remember thinking,
do you remember?
Of all distilleries to make the claim of being the best in the world, they went, yeah, we're going to print it on the front of the box.
They've got the history. They can back it up.
And do you remember the Fior that had it looked like it was a perfume bottle?
Yeah. It was like it put optimal sizes to shame. It was this giant bottle that was tall and slender.
Yeah. What's White Mackay. So Dalmore, Jura, Fettercan, and a couple of years ago, there was a couple of head honchos from White Mackay just doing a bit of a scouting mission. I assume they were having talked to their distributors and stuff. Came into the Oak Barrel, had a bit of Dalmore and this sort of stuff, and then he points out the Fior. It's like, where the hell did you get that? And I was like, well, it's not brought into Australia, so we imported it.
Yeah.
Like, you're importing Fettercan Fior? I was like, yeah. So actually, I think it's quite a good whiskey. If you're going to bottle it that young, put a little bit more of the peated stuff in, so you get rid of that really harsh. That Fettercan has. And it was like, I think
we've never sold one, never will, but it looks cool on the shelf. You know what I mean?
It's like, no word of a lie. I think he patted me on the back and just like, good for you. And I was like, oh, fuck, what have I done here?
Yeah, good for you. Yeah.
They've since dumped the Fior, which I didn't think was a bad whiskey. But like, Fettercan is one of those ugly ducklings they throw a lot of virgin oak at it young now just to calm the spirit down because it is so harsh. And they did have... There
are a bunch of distilleries that still seem to do that thing where they completely rebrand like every 2 years. And Fettercan was one for ages. And so was Glen Scotia for a long time. And so was Glengarry for a long time. They kept sort of, like, we don't know what to do with it. Let's repackage it into something else.
Yeah. I think it's like single malt is the buzzword. I mean, we're sitting here drinking grains and blends and double grains and that sort of stuff. But for the mass market, if you want to get into whiskey and you don't know too much about it, you look for a single malt because you assume that's what everyone's talking about, right? So I think you can have a couple of goes, and really the UK market's the only one that remembers. Yeah. If you're Fettercan and you don't break America and Australia, okay, fine. Well, let's do that again. Try 2 years down the track. Let's give it another go, because at the end of the days we're a very small market, Australia, compared to others. Denver and Liley glass, I see Milne. Now that's a proper glass.
I got my two go-tos. We'll talk glasses later. Carry on.
Yeah, as if you dedicate a whole stream to talking about glassware to drink whiskey out of. Jesus Christ, how boring.
Give me a break. That was good fun.
Jumping back into some comments here. Pat is drinking Laddie 16. That's another serious whiskey. James Finnegan, Jimmy Finney, has got the Nova Starward wine cask.
Good to see you, Jim.
I think he might actually have the original wine cask label on there. Mark Teague points out that the Scotch Malt Whisky Society scene in Denmark is quite popular.
They're mental over there. They love it. They're such an active branch. And it's a small branch, but they're so fervent. I love it.
And he's talking a lot about Distillery 94, saying Distillery 94 is terrible. Apparently, I think.
No.
I think I've paraphrased that right. He might have said it's the greatest thing of all time, but I think it might be terrible. And just before you finish on that one, Matt, Crafty Field from the Craftworks Distillery in Kapiti is drinking Classic Laddie, and that's sort of finally a whiskey that fits the theme of tonight. A good, solid staple that is always going to be there. Hopefully, they're not distilling at the moment, so.
Mark, this one's for you, mate. This one's for you. A Distillery 94. There you go. It's sitting on my desk. Fettercan wins again.
Mate, like Fettercan, it's young. It's really aggressive young. And there's some average Fettercans. But once it gets over about 10, 12 years, there is some real beauty to be found. And there's the Antique Lines of Spirit series. Had an awesome one. I love this one. So this is 10 years old from Aston Morris, the Belgian bottlers, brought in by our good friends at the Elysian down in Melbourne, and we hope they're doing all right with everything that they got going on down there. But Fettercan, bourbon cask, get over 10 years old, and it actually some really great whiskies.
This one was
North Star had a cracking one as well.
Yeah, this one's sitting at 11 from a wine cask. Sorry, Scotty, I know wine casks aren't much fun, but first fill wine cask, Fettercan. So actually, it was a first fill Barrique STR, Shave Toast Rechar. Good old Jim Swan treatment.
Yeah, the classic STR. Sorry, Milne, you about to say something?
I was going to say, it is always the indies that champion those lesser known or lesser considered whiskies. That just, there's some that their natural releases are pretty average, but there's, you look back at the old Aston Morris, Carmore kind of bottlings that are just like, you sit there and you go, oh, never heard of this. To most, the distillery is just completely unknown. But the liquid is just like, shit, this is proper stuff rather than, this is not what I thought this was.
I'm a huge Carnmore fan. I love their stuff.
Because we started the Whiskey Exchange, when we were bottling some stuff, we were bottling a lot of old Pernod liquid that was just, obviously going into blending for them. And it was just like the stuff towards the very end, just before I left, it was when there was amazing Glen Keiths, Glen Tockers. It was just, people were just like, oh, I've never had Glen Burgies. We were like, I've got no idea what, I've never had a Glen Burgie, I've never had Glen Tockers, and then I had Glen Keith. I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. You know what I always found fascinating as well? A real eye-opener for me, Andy, was I was walking through a Pernod warehouse, and there was a bunch of casks along one wall, which were all like Diageo casks sitting in this warehouse. And you like, there's so much obviously maturing in different places, and can we borrow that and trade us off for that kind of things going on in the trade, that you see like a row of casks from a Diageo distillery. That'd be like a Glenlossie or something casks sitting along a wall. And you'd say to the distillery manager, oh, where did they come from? How did you get Lossie casks in this warehouse at Pernod? And they go, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, moving right along. And so like, there's a story behind there somewhere. Like we don't know what to do with those kind of thing. And I know where they always end up being often sold to indies. And but it's always very cool. Those kind of things. It's all very small world when you think about it.
And it really is kind of small business. Like everyone, I like big distilleries. Everything's barcoded and you know where everything is. But everyone thinks this romantic idea that everything's sort of specially picked out, and someone's going and nosing every single cask every single day. But then people also forget that people make mistakes, and I think one of the greatest, which is most terrible at the same time, phone calls I remember being sort of privy to.
This is going to be good.
A bottling company had received two vats of things, so they were dumped into IPCs, sent to the bottlers. They were putting it into IPCs to send to the bottlers. And the guy who was doing it misread the notes, and there was something like a 29-year-old Glengarry and a 7-year-old Glengarry, and they were meant to go in two separate IPCs. And someone didn't pay attention quite closely enough, then it all went into one. We were stuck there just going, what do you call that? You can't make any reference to it. You can't say anything about it. It's and from an insurance and a value point of view, you've got something that you could have sold for hundreds, if not over £1,000 for a bottle, and then something that's a £60 whiskey. It's like, well, where do we then sit with that? But sometimes the magic of those is incredible, and the resulting whiskies. Because it was Ardbeg that they blended. Is it Ardbeg and Glenmorangie?
Well, they had their Serendipity. Yeah,
Serendipity. That was it. That was apparently a mistake.
Well, one of my favorites. One of our prominent Sydney members here. He had a whole bunch of society bottles sitting upon his mantelpiece above the fireplace in his living room, but they're all ones of quite rarity, and ones that he wanted to hold on to that last 2 grams in the bottle. So there's varying levels in each one, but there was mostly in the last sort of, last 50 to 100 mils in the bottle of each. And he had a cleaner come to the house and clean the house, and she saw 12, 13 bottles on the mantelpiece that were all the same green bottle shape. So she blended them all together to save room and clean the mantelpiece, and ended up with one bottle full of all those single casks. And I think his cleaner's name was Jackie. So I think he ended up calling it Jackie's Blend. It's like, what else can you do? Like, okay, it's Jackie's Blend now. What a shame. But like all these like nice little rare samples sitting on his mantelpiece. And I thought, they're all the same.
But sometimes it's a rare treat when you get it, because when I left the UK, I obviously had sort of about 70, 80 odd bottles open in my house. And I tried very hard over the sort of 6 weeks before I left to consume as much as possible, but there was far more than I could achieve.
Power on, power on.
And this is just of what was open. But there was, it got to the end, and I had loads of sample bottles and things. So I bottled things into 100ml bottles and 200ml bottles. But there was still always dregs and little bits here and little bits there. And so the real best stuff I obviously did drink, but I then realized it's like, well, I've got an opportunity to make a couple of blends. And so I made 3 blends. One was all relatively young whiskey, unpeated.
Yeah.
One was a mixture of peated and unpeated whiskies that were sort of probably around the 70 to 100 pound mark. And then one that was all ridiculous bottles where I've kind of put as much as I can into sample bottles and just had 10 mil, 15 mil of stuff. And it contained Broras, Port Ellens, Chichaboos,
all those names.
All the names that everyone just goes, geez.
Yeah.
It was a bottle of all of that. And the last time I went back to the UK, it had been sitting in a bottle for about a year. And so sort of nicely settled together. It's beautiful. Like, I actually now don't know which bottle we had. I think we had a sort of the mid-range, mildly peated. But it was stunning. Part of the fun was actually.
It's a funny thing about infinity bottles. They can either be really good or really bad.
Yeah, I've done bad really well.
Same here. I've got one on my shelf right now behind the camera that is a total dog. It's undrinkable.
Split it in half. Start again. Start putting new things in.
Couldn't be bothered.
There was something I was going to bring up, but actually, Crafty Fielders or beat me to the punch. It might be throwing the team from Baker Williams and Mudgee down the well here with their wild card, which was a mixture of brandy spirits and malt whiskey spirits that they'd accidentally filled into the same cask over the top of one another. It's like, through a half-empty cask, I'll put that in. And so can't be called anything anymore.
No.
But became the wild card. And, mate, it was like, and this is not good. I think their rum is excellent. Their whiskey is very good. I think the rum's better. The wild card is unbelievable because it's got all that like really fragrant, brandy, soft, almost like more cognac-y than armagnac-y, that really pretty nose, and then just a real muscular, weighty spirit body. And it's bloody genius. And so now I think they're doing more of it, trying to recreate the accident. But, that's...
John Glazer did that from Compass Box. I remember his always, him and Greg as well, Glass, who's now White Mackay now, and thank God seems to be making something great of Jura again. But he used to just always have bottles and things around, and every time you saw him, he was just like, yeah, try this, have a go at this, have a go at this. And I remember one time he rocked up and had this thing, and he was like, well, is it cognac? Is it whiskey? It was like, it's quite heavy cognac, but super fruity whiskey. So I was really confused. And it was a Calvados whiskey blend.
Right. Yeah.
You love to see it. You love to see it. I'm going to catch up on a couple of quick Facebook comments here. Jason Davis said, agreed on the Aston Morris, Fettercan, Scott. Then one of these emoticons, whatever that means. Also says, Scott, you look very attractive tonight. Thank you, Jason. Russ Glover, the Bird Series.
I didn't see that comment, but okay.
Yeah. Russ Glover, the Birds Series Fettercan was wild. Yeah, like Ross, that was an unbelievable whiskey. Mark Teagues asked a question, why can I now get isolation drowns from Elysian shipped to me in Tasmania from Victoria, but not from Whisky and Ailment? We might come back to that. Matt Bailey says something. Oh, there you go. He answers your own question. Marco Greza has finished dinner. He's finishing the evening on Whiskey Kisses, the Flurio Whiskey Kisses, which is unbelievable whiskey. And actually, speaking to Gareth today, I hope they're doing well down there. Crafty Field says, Scotty, what about Nathan's wildcard? Mate, I was getting it. You beat me to the punch. How was Jackie's blend? I think, probably fine. Matt Bailey might actually know, but probably.
I've never tasted it, but I'm sure it was a proper zombie.
Yeah. And Joel Eastman says, speaking of almost finished bottles, we have dozens of half-filled bottles in the house, some 7 or 8 years old, using the lockdown to try and kill a few. What's your thoughts on oxidization? How much of an effect?
Good question.
Very good question. It largely depends on where things are kept and how much is left in the bottle and those sort of things. I've got my own opinions. Matt, I know you, have a few open bottles sitting around, and I reckon Milne you probably have as well. So, oxidization in bottles at home. What do we reckon?
I mean, in any given moment, I've got maybe 40 to, depending on how busy the week is with events and stuff, but between 40 and 100 opens at any given moment. However, I reckon most of the time, like 90% of the time, oxidization actually improves whiskey. I'm in the camp of oxidization improves it. It actually ages it somewhat. It takes the edge off some bad whiskeys and it actually improves some already good whiskeys. But the 10% where I don't think it works is actually peated whiskey, generally speaking. I find peated whiskey, yes, there have been examples of some peated whiskeys that improve with an open bottle after a short amount of time. But if you come back to a peated whiskey after it's been open for like a year, half a bottle left or something, and you've come back to it after a year, it's often quite muted and the peat is gone. It's a bit flat. It tastes like a bit sort of like a flat, boggy sort of mess in the glass. It's not always the case, but I find it often is. So that's why. But on the other hand, sherried whiskies often really appreciate oxidization. If you guys ever opened a bottle of like a Brunner or 105 or something and you taste it and it's actually quite sharp and quite hot, then you leave it for like 2 weeks open, come back to it and it's like, oh man, this is great. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like it takes it often cuts that top ethanol, phenol note off the top of the whiskey and you get this lovely spirit.
It can go both ways, though. I know, Matt, you know this because I think you were actually there the day that we did this when, very high proof Australian whiskies, and I'm going to pick on Heartwood a little bit here, that like whiskies at 65% pushing into the low 70s, you would think would last quite a long time, but actually coming back even like 2 weeks or a month afterwards, had lost a bit of their vibrancy and appeal almost. I don't know if that was like in that case in the Australian climate and the Australian environment where they're just the sheer onslaught to the amount of cask influence. But I think it's a great thing because open a bottle of Heartwood, finish it tonight.
If you're opening a bottle of Heartwood right now, drink it in one night. No.
Definitely don't.
No, don't
drink responsibly. Yeah.
Drink responsibly. No, but like it was. I don't think it's a big enough sample size, Scotty. I know exactly which dram you mean, and I know exactly what you mean. But I find
to preface it, it is still my favorite. The one we're talking about is my favorite Australian whiskey of all time.
Was that Release the Beast?
Release the Beast, my favorite Australian whiskey of all time.
It's a very strong contender, if not the same for me. I just that it's. I don't know. I know that one was hard. Was not much good the day or two after. But it was. I don't know if that's a big enough sample to say that cask strength is or higher proof or whatever.
Yeah, but what I mean is like in Scotland where things are probably aging for a little bit longer, oxidation seems to work. In Australia, I'm not overly sure. I mean, I remember many years ago when I was like first getting into whiskey, so going back to like the mid 1920s at this point, I had a vintage Glenrothes and it was an 86, which is not my birthday, but it was an 86, and I opened it only on my birthday, and it was at that point the oldest whiskey when I was 20 years old, the oldest whiskey I'd ever had, and I only opened it on my birthday, and so with whoever was around, you sort of knock off a little bit more, and it was about year 3-4 when it was about probably like between a half and 2/3 full that it was unbelievable, and it just there's obviously an element of maybe my palate and my taste buds evolving over that time as well, getting more attuned to whiskey and knowing what to look for. But I specifically remember years 3 and 4 were unbelievable. 5 was good. By 6, when it was about down to a quarter left, it had sort of gone off a cliff. And I remember the first time I ever tried the Glenmorangie 18, in the big box. It sounds like a car door closing when you close it. I tried that and I was like, man, it's probably the most expensive whiskey I bought back at I was like 19 years old or something at the time. And I was like, $100 or $90, whatever it was. But I thought like this, I don't get it. And it was till it got a quarter empty, and I was like, I get it. Like this is actually the best thing I've tried. So
I want just on that point, but sorry, Andy, I'll let you jump in here. But on that point of Glenmorangie 18, I remember I used to chuckle at on the label. It probably still does say 18 extremely rare. And I used to laugh at that because it said aged 18 years extremely rare. And then we head into that era in like 2014, 2015 of no age statement, everything. So I was like, actually, maybe 18 years old is extremely rare.
It's gone full circle.
Yeah, we've gone full circle. Yeah.
Andy, so I'm going to let you chat in a second, but a couple of things coming through on the Facebook. Crafty Field is going to put some cider into a whiskey, apparently. So thanks for that suggestion, Milne. You've just ruined a very good cask of whiskey we probably had. Lee Atwood from the Atwood's Distillery, and I have his wild rye down here. We might crack that open. He says, I hear lights has an impact on whiskey, but he's never had a bottle see the light of day after a night, so doesn't have to worry about that. Joel Eastman finished off a bottle of Balblair 97 2013 release. Was a different whiskey, lost some edge compared to what I remembered, but had amazing fruitiness. And Peter Bignell from Belgrove Distillery is piping in. Matt, are you talking about oxidation or aeration? Every time a bottle is opened, the more volatiles evaporate and mellow. Good for harsh whiskies. Now, I think Peter Bignell, I can speak for all our panelists in saying that we were hoping no experts were going to come on this tonight because we're talking a bit of rubbish. But probably.
Peter, just to answer your question, sorry, I'm going with oxidization. I don't think it's aeration because it wasn't a case of opening the bottle a number of times. It was just about it being an already opened bottle.
Fine.
Sorry, Andy, what's your thoughts on oxidization?
I think pretty much agree with everything you've said. I think the only, and I think Joel's comment on Balblair is probably a perfect way to talk about it. I think from memory that 97 was bourbon cask predominantly. And I find that bit of age, so 97, so we're 16-year-old on that one. But once you kind of hit 15 plus in age and bourbon cask and light and fruity, so I find Kalila on that sort of talk about peat, Kalila kind of drops off after a certain period of being open. Certainly that sort of that light, delicate, fruity style of spirit. So Glenmorangie in bourbon would definitely just fall off a cliff. Balblair, it does. I've seen that a couple of times where if you just leave it for a year with half a bottle, it doesn't stand up because it's light, it's delicate, it's fruity, and that delicate whiskey that I generally tend to go towards. I love that sort of style. Delicate bourbon cask where you kind of got to find the flavors a bit more. They just don't stand up because once oxygen gets to them, it just takes away that subtle nuance. It's when you look at it from wine, it's the same of a big Chardonnay stands up to age, and a big Chardonnay with this backing of extra flavor lasts 20 years and still has something to it. A 20-year-old Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio that's been stainless steel and bottled, it's going to taste like shit after 20 years.
Just on it, there is another thing to mention about Chardonnay, and that's Chardonnay is actually what they drink in heaven. So there's a bit of divine intervention coming down and touching each bottle and just going, it's going to be okay. God will make sure, and the angels are coming down and making sure that Chardonnay lasts quite a long time.
Surely he's drinking Riesling.
There's no oak in Riesling. I just look for oak, mate. That's a very true story, actually. I got into whiskey before I got into wine, and the first one I really got my head around was all the shit that no one else wanted to drink, like Chardonnay left over from the 80s, because I was just looking for oak. I was like, oh, give me my oak fix.
Yeah.
So I think you're a fan of sherry cask if you like chewing on wood then.
Sherry casks have no place in whiskey.
Oh,
Fourth bill ex-bourbon casks. Fourth bill ex-bourbon casks. This is where I wanted the round table to get to. This is the point. And there are some heavy hitters coming in. I've just seen that Bertie Kaysen has joined watching. He's probably dived out.
He joined a while ago.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I reckon people like Peter Bignell and Bertie Kaysen, you should probably jump on the Zoom next time we do this and talk rubbish with us.
You're right. Well, on sort of talking about your
the topic of rubbish,
birthday whiskey, what you open on your birthday and that first thing. What we're talking about what we go back to with whiskey and what is our sort of old time favorites and things that we revisit. What was the first whiskey that you guys had that made you go, shit, this stuff's all right. I think this is good. Because for me, it wasn't the first whiskey I had. It was definitely another experience in a bar that I kind of went, now we're talking. And do you still drink that whiskey?
Very good question. Do you want to field it first, Matty, or should I go first?
You go ahead, Scotty.
Okay, so I remember when I was 18, beer was what you drank, and then I just sort of fell in love with spirits somehow. And I don't know whether that was just a cheaper way to get drunk, like the higher alcohol appealed to me. I honestly don't know. But to be honest, it wasn't whiskey, it was gin. It was Gordon's gin that I loved that freshness and that flavour. But I found, particularly, 75 years ago when I was growing up, there was a bit of a glass ceiling for gin. We didn't have the scene that we had now, so you couldn't go too many places. You went from Gordon's to Bombay.
Bombay was the fancy stuff.
Bombay was the fancy. Gordon export.
I couldn't afford it, right? So, but I fell in love with the concept of gin, and then the whiskies that I sort of got into were Jack Daniels and Jameson. And the thing that I'm at this point in time, I'm very much marketed to by walking into a bottle store, what is like the 2 for $60 deal. Back when CPI was 10 years ago, so I would obviously lead it by the big companies that could loss lead a bit of that. So I drank quite a bit of Jack Daniels and enjoyed that, but fell in love with Jameson. And I've thought a lot about this because I don't actually remember going, like, there being a light bulb moment, but I think it was Jimmy McNulty on The Wire, the character there, used to drink Jameson. And I think if it came down to a Jack Daniels or Jameson thing, I have, I'm a Fitzsimons, that's an Irish name. But when you look at all my grandparents, there's Irish, there's Scottish, there's Dutch, there's Australian, one generation back is English. So I can't claim anything. But maybe that hint of that bit of Irish blood and Jimmy McNulty on The Wire drinking Jameson, I sort of lent that way. Same thing happened, ran into a bit of a glass ceiling with Irish whiskey and went, okay, what's this Scotch stuff? And I remember quite vividly when I moved out of home, the local bottle store in Redfern, they had maybe 10 whiskies. It was a generic chain store. And I just went through, Glenmorangie 10, Lefroy 10, Ardbeg 10, Lagavulin 16, Aberlour 12, just whatever was available once a month, save a bit of money and do it that way.
Once a month, fancy.
Yeah, that was like 50 or $60 a pop back then, Australian. So I could afford it. And living in the city, I was paying less money on like midnight cabs back out to Parramatta to go home. So I had a bit more disposable income by moving out home. And my parents' board that they were charging me wasn't particularly cheap either. So, and funnily enough, when I was still a journalist and doing the Dram Club stuff with a vet, where we would do whiskey tastings at bars and run sort of whiskey tastings we wanted to go to, even now and again, a staff member would challenge me and try and blind pour me whiskey and guess what it was. And I'd get it wrong every time, except it was Jameson. And Jameson is the only whiskey that I can pick in a blind lineup. And Auchentoshan, obviously, because it sucks. But Jameson. We do stock Auchentoshan, so I do apologise for that. But that's my story. And to this day, I drink, as you guys know.
Yeah, you're still drinking cases of Jameson, definitely.
Yeah. See me out of Rover and that sort of thing. It's the Boilermaker to my Pinot Noir is always Jameson.
I think for me, it was when I was a kid and I'd smell my dad's drink, and he always drank the cheapest blended whiskey with soda and ice. And it was pretty much half and half. He liked a big measure of Teachers or Bells or whatever, and then soda on top and heaps of ice. And that was his regular drink. But I smelt, I as a teenager, I didn't drink them, but I smelt them and I was like, I don't like the smell of that. But it wasn't until I was like 16 or 17 or something that my grandfather, who had moved in with us into the granny flat attached to the house, I rocked up one night, and he was a night owl, massive night owl. And I walked past the flat one night, and it was about 1 a.m. or something. It was really late. And he said, "Oh, come in, have a whiskey." And like I said, I'm 16 or something. He didn't care. He goes, "Come in, have a whiskey." So I sit down and
harden up, son.
Harden up, and he poured me neat, not ice, no soda, neat, just a Johnny Walker Black Label. And I was like, I'd never tasted this before. I was like, oh wow, that's actually nice. I remember thinking that was nice rather than all that tinny metallic smell of the soda and the whiskey together, the highball sort of iteration, if you like, without lemon or anything. But and I quite enjoyed it. And I didn't really get into whiskey at that point. Obviously, I didn't get into whiskey when I was 17. Otherwise, I'd have a much longer history in it than I do. But pardon me.
It's also illegal to drink in this country before you're 18 years old. So if you're 17 and listening to this, Don't stop. Close the window. Go home. Go to bed.
This is, of course, was illegal. But then when I was sort of 18 to sort of age 22, 23, I drank a bit of rum, a bit of beer. I didn't really care much for whiskey. But when I was about 23 or so, I was walking through a bottle shop in Melbourne, and it was an independent little bottle shop in Carlton up near Lygon Street. They're not there anymore. They're a fantastic little bottle shop. And they had this special on this independent bottling, and I can't even remember who the bottler was. But I remember it wasn't a core range bottling. It was an independent bottling of a Klein Leash. And it had some special tag on it of like $90. And it was more than I'd ever thought I'd ever spend on a bottle of whiskey. And it was a ridiculous amount of money. And you think, I'm never spending $90 on a bottle of whiskey. I was like, okay, I won't buy that. And I came back the next day and I bought it. So I came back the next day and I bought it. And I remember thinking, oh, this is what amazing whiskey must taste like. And I remember taking it home thinking, actually, it does taste amazing. And it was that waxy sort of Klein Leash note in it. I think it had been either a Malt of Scotland kind of thing or a Gordon and MacPhail or something like that. I don't know.
There was a bit of McKillop's Choice in the country around that time as well.
It may have been McKillop's. I can't even really picture the label. I just remember it was a Klein Leash, and it would have been a youngish Klein Leash, probably an 8 or a 10-year-old for that price. And it wasn't really anything special, but it was just an interesting cask. And I remember tasting and thinking, oh, okay, it's great. And then my second real love after that was discovering Bruichladdich as a distillery for me, which I collected for a bit after sort of 2008. But yeah, that was sort of my journey. It was just sort of a bit of Johnny Walker with my granddad, and then sort of when I was 18 and 1 minute old, everyone.
No, I had a similar path. You know, my parents, you know, their family are all from Scotland, but I grew up in England. But they were all drinking. It was always grouse and bells and teachers was in the house, and that was kind of what we always had. Mum always drank it with soda and lots of ice, pretty much half and half. Dad just had it neat, sometimes with soda. And I always found it quite harsh. I thought, you know, I was brought up to think that it was nice. And I was told, you know, the mindset was, this is good, you just don't like it. But, you know, I just wasn't there and really appreciating it. But I had this, you know, affinity to Scotland, and it's, you know, I spent every year in and out of Scotland my entire life, and it feels like home to me. And so, you know, I always sort of thought it's something that I probably I'll fall in love with eventually. And I've just not got there yet. And I lived in a tiny village, which I found out was actually the smallest town in the county that I lived in just the other day. I don't know why I was Googling my town, but there was some reason we were debating populations.
Homesick.
Yeah. But we would, you know, it was a tiny place, and there was an even smaller village near to us that a friend of mine worked in this pub. And we went there. It turned out they had this amazing Scotch, and they had a book of their whiskies, which, you know, for a pub was unusual, for a pub in the middle of nowhere where, you know, apart from the 50 people that live in that village, everyone else has to drive there. It's just a bit of an odd thing to do, to have about 100 odd whiskies open in the back bar. But they introduced me to Black Bottle and Ardbeg 10.
Oh yeah.
And Lager 16. And they are the three that I think I haven't had Black Bottle for a long time now. I'm intrigued to see.
It's a bit difficult to find now as well, especially here.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to find, and I'm not sure. Actually, did we do it? No, it's not us, is it?
So Black Bottle story, like that same period when I was talking about the White Horse story before with the Germans, I drank so much Black Bottle because it wasn't available in Australia, and that's what all the locals on Isla drank was Black Bottle, and even in Glasgow they were drinking Black Bottle. So I got straight home. First thing I did, Andy, and you probably might have packed the order, was bought a 6-pack of Black Bottle off Whisky Exchange, and that lasted me about a year as a house blend. We actually managed to get a little bit into the store because it's is it Burn Stewart? Is it Bunner?
So I think it's Burn Stewart. It's distilled.
It's Burn because it had a lot of Bunner in it originally, and then they changed the recipe and it sort of fell apart. But that for me, I've forgotten about that whiskey, but that was a whiskey that I discovered in Scotland and brought home.
That's right, because
like 6 bottles.
They turned it into that shitty oval bottle rather than the old dumpy one, and it
sucked.
Yeah, I mean, there's a packaging change that I was just like. I mean, it's a beauty thing, so who cares? But
I'm getting liquid definitely changed. I don't know the product that well, but what was it predominantly? Is a big proportion of Bamor in there, wasn't there?
there was definitely something. I think it was Balmoral.
I'm talking the dumpy bottle era, like that.
Yeah, Dumpy Bottle had a good chunk of Islay.
It was always described to me as peated bunner, but it might have had some more in there as well.
They didn't start peating bunner.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. Maybe they were just faking it because it was their brand and they were trying to pump their own distillery out. Couple of things here on the Facebook. Joel Bradbury has still never had a Klein leash, mate. All I can say to you there is sort that out. Don't go for the official bottlings. Go find an independent bottling. For me, that's where the true Klein leash spirit comes from. And true story. When we had Dave Broom, Alex Bruce, and Charles McLean here a couple of years ago. And we sort of said, you can pick any bottle off the back wall to pick at a tasting. All Charles wanted to find was a Klein leash. We didn't have any, so we did something else, but that's all he was looking for. Joel Eastman was...
It's the dream.
Yeah. Joel Eastman was spoiled with whiskies in that shop. I assume you're talking about some other shop, but that's all right. But first one I bought... Yeah, okay, no, good. Beautiful. Buy more.
Joel worked at the Oak Barrel in... he'll correct me. I think he's originally from Australia. I think it was the early 2010s that he was working there. It's before 2010.
It's that Joel.
Yeah.
It's Oak Barrel Joel. Fuck, sorry, mate. But see, like, I try and put this out of my memory because, like, my predecessors in whiskey, Joel went over to Whisky Exchange.
I presume it is anyway.
And is now a legend running, like, the gin tours and that sort of stuff. Bloody Dave Withers is mastered us through at Archie Rose and just won best rye whiskey in the world. I got to pick up my fucking game, mate.
What's going on, man?
You're on a Zoom call. So,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Zoom call for wankers. That's what I've done. Yeah. But he was Abalao Abuna. I knew the name was familiar, and I was like, I said, it's that Joel. Sorry, Joel, mate. Opened on a 30-degree Celsius day, was sweating like a dog trying to drink it, but was so good. Peter Bignell coming in. Only 13 years ago, when I was helping build Nant Distillery, I was given a taste of Lagavulin. It was a light bulb moment. Never liked a whiskey before that. You probably know what I did a couple of years later, and now it has consumed my life. And what I did a couple of years later was build a still to get rid of some excess rye. And Peter Bignell, I love that you're commenting on the Facebook there, but I reckon next time you need to be on screen talking to us.
That's a good idea.
So if you can, I don't know if you've got a little camera there or a computer that you can, or a phone you can do that with, Peter, but we want you on the stream. Apparently Black Bottle is 52 Australian dollars to Mark Teague somewhere. Joel, he was growing rye 13 years ago. In fact, we could probably dedicate a whole roundtable to Peter Bignell and the Bignell family. Caleb Chan is the old Black Bottle, the one that was purely an Islay blended whiskey, apart from percentages, had the recipe changed to include other distilleries regions. Yes. I don't know if it was always exclusively Islay, but it had a big proportion. Yeah, it had a big proportion of Islay, and yes, the recipe has definitely changed over the years. Peter Bignell pipes in for Joel. Been growing rye for 50 years, so yes, that's a story we'd like to tell, Peter, if you're keen to come along. Joel Eastman says, Scott, even though you never remembered me, you're still a good-looking bloke. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. May have not said that exactly.
Comments I can't see here. Obviously, it must be just
paraphrasing. And Ali Maruda, who we do have to give a bit of a shout-out for being a volunteer firefighter as well as a whiskey lover during the devastation. Benefit of isolation, cleaned up the whiskey shelf and found an OB 1997 Ben Nevis. And that's not official bottling, that's an Oak Barrel 1997 Ben Nevis, which is a really ugly Ben Nevis. It's industrial. It actually came off the Whiskey Agency. It's a cask we bought.
I remember that bottling.
Real ugly, but like fruity, pineapple-y thing. Good whiskey. But he points an interesting question. Has anyone else recently discovered any forgotten bottles in times of isolation and digging through things? I did find actually a bottle of Arran the other week that was very kindly given to me by the team from Nonjata. That a mutual friend of ours, Matt, brought back to us. So Stefan, I haven't opened it yet, but that's another thing. We should probably get Stefan from Nonjata, probably the person I go to when I have questions about Japanese whiskey. If we get him on a Zoom, I can crack his Arran that was bottled for him. But yeah, I had sort of forgotten that was where I'm and not in storage, and stumbled over that recently. Boys, any whiskies you've stumbled in the collection?
I found it was actually a sample rather than a full bottle. But there was a few different samples of bits and bobs. And I also bought a whole dump of minis 3 years ago. And just put them in all at auction. And so just really random bits and drabs. But it was just great to just sort of dig through again and be like, wow, that's, and the advantage of being minis is actually you can just, they're relatively cheap and easy to pick up, and it's a great way to try loads of different bits and bobs from history that most of us can't afford to buy a full bottle of Brora. Well, in Brora, like 60s Bowmores and Bowmore Deluxe and stuff like that. That's iconic, but the bottles are now hundreds of pounds. Thousands of dollars. It's you can still get a bit of a crack at it, but just a glass rather than a full bottle.
I don't think for me. I found a Colburn sample that I didn't realize I had, and I that was sitting up the back, and I found a Ben Riach sample that I didn't realize I still had, which was it's just a small bottle of a 1972 Ben Riach, which was a kicking around. So I haven't done a full clean out yet of the shelf, but there's all sorts of stuff over there that I need to pull out. There's some old stuff in there that I need to rediscover, but no, not really, not too much.
Quick comment from Facebook there, Peter Bignell, who has quite obviously ignored our request for him to come on the stream with us, but he's commented that he sees Matt using hand sanitizer. I think we're all having a spray at the moment. He's dedicated one of his stills to making it and can't keep up at the moment. So a big kudos to you, Peter, for doing that. I'm actually using Carew from North Richmond, a very great gin distillery, and rum, but we don't know if we can talk about rum yet, but we're going to forget that I said that. But they are doing a lot of hand sanitizer out there. I actually had an idea to actually make a shelf full of just craft hand sanitizer, just almost like a museum of like, do you remember when? But no one can keep up with production, so I don't really want to hoard the stuff while we need it. But we're running a little bit low at the moment, so I've actually bought some of Bricks, the rum distillery, just up here from us. But interesting story I had today. Got a phone call. Someone who the line wasn't great, but they were from sort of somewhere regional in Australia, and we're sort of talking to is Ian the owner of the business, and I was like, no, there's no Ians here, and blah blah blah. And it turned out, because we're a stockist of the Stone Pine gin distillery from Bathurst, somewhere she'd got her wires crossed and our number had come up, and she was calling up trying to donate $500 to the distillery because they stopped gin production as just working hell for leather at hand sanitizer. Because Orange and Bathurst and Mudgee, they're reasonably big towns, but you have to be very, very careful about the surrounding towns and the hospital, the capacity that if things break out there, it may not be able to handle that capacity. But I loved that, there was someone who was quite obviously from a small country down, from towns that I love and I can't visit at the moment, and my parents are out there, but as soon as it's clear, I'm going to go straight out and pump some money into Bathurst and Orange. But just like locals calling up going, I love what you're doing. I don't want anything. I just want to give you $500 to, buy the next week's dinner so you can keep doing what you're doing, which was a really sort of touching moment. Unfortunately, like, this is his mobile number, call this one, because I'd take your $500, but it's not going to do any good for you. I've got no bars to spend it at. It's useless on me at the moment. But I think that was
this is the tab that you promised me earlier, is it?
Yeah. It's gone. Yes, speak to Ian Glenn.
Tab done.
Speak to Ian Glenn at Stone Pine Distillery. He's got your tab. Yeah, I thought that was like a really. She's obviously seen like something in the local paper or the local media out there, and that was just a really cool little moment to go. Yeah, we are getting around each other, just like 2020. What a fucking year,
So far.
Yeah.
We just thought like bushfires are out. We're starting to have really big conversations about bushfires in the future. Do we need to move summer holidays to winter holidays in Australia? For tourism concerns and that sort of stuff, like big seismic changes. And just as those conversations are starting to happen, bang. So,
what I find fascinating about the discussion about hand sanitizer is that the reason why it's obviously so topical at the moment with coronavirus and everything. But what I find fascinating is that no one needs gin. As in, like, you know, and let me rephrase that. Hold on. Like, as in, like, if you don't have gin, you'll be okay. But if you need hand sanitizer, you need hand sanitizer, kind of thing. But like, that's why these distilleries are struggling to keep up with demand. But at the same time, by the time I think a lot of them come to market, I think we're going to see a proper glut, and there's going to be some good hand sanitizer specials, I think.
Yeah. So with hand sanitizer, obviously, and Cameron Syme, who's the president or the chairman or whatever it is of the Australian Distillers Association, has done a lot of work. Cameron from Lime Burners Distillery in Albany in Perth, and now the Parongarup Distillery, and obviously Margaret River, where they do their gin, has been really, really vigilant with getting information out to distillers about what actually is required with WHO laws and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But basically, it needs to be above 60%, and that sort of thing. And funnily enough, I do have a whiskey here that is 60% on the nose. And we should probably get back to the whiskies we're drinking. And this is something that I think Susie was doing a bit of a stock take from the Society After Whiskey Fair, and said, Matt Bailey, we're missing a bit of 76.144. I was like, Matt, I haven't seen it. I don't know where it is. Don't know what happened to it.
No idea where that bottle went. Sorry, Susie.
Yeah, so might start with a Lork and end with a Mac. I call it the Darkness, it's called, and it's 60%, and it makes excellent hand sanitizer. I just think it's beautiful hand sanitizer. Just gorgeous. Just make your hands smell very, very good.
A little bit bariki there.
Yeah. So just to be clear, this is me washing Scott Fitzsimons from the oak barrel, washing my hands with a single cask malt lick bottled by the Society. That's what's happening right now.
That's what this roundtable has become.
So that's the longest lead into a punchline in human history.
Yeah, you said it. You set the story well there. It's good.
So a couple of things from the Facebook as well. Jimmy Finney, James Finnegan, found a sample bottle of Manickmore in 1988 last week that I got at Society tasting a long time ago. So that's pretty cool. And Crafty Field does
point out... man. All my fans are here. Come on, man.
Yeah, both of them. Crafty Field does say something that, you know, is a reality, is here to stay, in the fact that hand sanitizer and these things are now part of life, because we are at the very early
very possibly. You could
very
be
early stages of this.
Yep.
The world that we know or knew is sort of done for the foreseeable future. And if we have a flu season every year, and obviously I'm an expert in global pandemics, you should definitely listen to me. Don't. Pure speculation. Do we have every year now, as we have flu season, a COVID-19 season? So I actually think if there is any silver linings to come from this, and hopefully there's more than one or two, is that these distilleries now know how to do hand sanitizer. And that is a revenue stream. And,
I'll just echo your comments before, Scotty. I have to throw my hat into for Cameron Syme over at Lime Burners, Tiger Snake, all of his distilleries over there. He's done a lot of work in terms of finding the correct way of regulation and production for distilleries to actually produce sanitizer. And some have been very fast. Some are getting on market soon, but that's where a priority is going to be, obviously, for a lot of distilleries coming up. And yeah.
And I don't think we can, Cameron is one of the elder statesmen of Australian whiskey production.
Absolutely.
And Milne, you weren't in Australia at this point in time, but I particularly Matt and myself remember vividly being punters at Oak Barrel Whiskey Fairs where Cameron's trying to flog Aussie whiskey, standing alongside, Casey Overeem, Pat Maguire from Sullivan's, Bill Lark, David Baker, all these people, and finding it really difficult to give away free whiskey when there's, Scotch whiskey and bourbon in the room. And Western Australia's a long way away, so there's a lot of logistic elements about, getting whiskey at the same price it is over there to over here and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the work he has done for the industry, and is a lawyer by trade, with the ADA, but also just giving, and particularly at times like this, doing some really hardcore research and knowledge on things that, requires a lawyer's skill set, and giving that information away for free, whether you're a paid up member of the ADA or not. I don't know what he's doing tonight. He's probably, working, but I think we should, definitely all raise a glass to Cam and what he's done, not only in the past month, but just in the past 15 years. For things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
He often, particularly on the East Coast, goes, for me, a little bit unheralded about what he's done for us. Just like, David Baker, the first, the 20 years of Bakery Hill Distillery. What a year to remember. 2020. Jesus Christ. Cancel all your celebrations.
On that point, Scotty, if I can just actually raise a question here. There's almost, you say that he almost goes sort of unheralded on the East Coast, right? It's because there's sort of like this West Coast, West Australian sort of part of whiskey now, and there's sort of the East Coast of whiskey, and then there's Tasmanian. But that's a stretch from even where it was maybe even like 6 months ago, where it was like mainland and Tasmanian, and then 6 months before that it was Australian whiskey. So like we're starting to see, I think, the beginning of regionality, if for lack of a better phrase, in the labeling and naming of where whiskey comes from in Australia. And I don't think that's necessarily a helpful thing, because I don't think it's been helpful in Scotch whiskey at all. So regionality in Scotch whiskey is now completely redundant. So do you think that this is something that is useful and should be heralded, should be promoted, or should be ignored?
Yeah, look, I completely agree with your concept of regions, and probably Milne was closer to the coalface than either of us were. In the 80s, the great whiskey lock, you needed a digestible way of classifying Scotch whiskey so that people could, understand. I like Islay, I go to another Islay. I like Speyside, I go to another Speyside. It was a genius marketing concept at the time. It's now outdated. We know that, and we don't try to talk about that anymore. I think it's very dangerous. Talking about where the whiskey comes from, Tasmania or New South Wales or Western Australia, is completely redundant, as you say, and irrelevant, because you've been to Tasmania, to Launceston, and to Hobart, and even from Hobart to Port Arthur. You can kick a footy there on a good day if the wind's blowing the right way, but the climates are completely different. And like you talk about New South Wales whiskey, Archie Rose versus Manly versus Blackgate versus Joadja versus Corowa versus Kapiti, versus Dobson's up in New England, completely different climates, creating completely different whiskies.
That's
so
right.
I think it's, and that's why, I know I've got a lot of Tasmanian friends, and they're pushing for that big Tasmanian GI, and I don't know if I can get behind that, because we need to talk about what actually makes the whiskey, and they've been
pushing that GI now for about 5 years.
Yeah. So, but I think we actually talk about other things, and almost take a few lessons from the Americans, who talk a lot more about summers. And if it's for certain straight regulations, if it's under 4 years, you need to let us know. Over 4 years, don't worry about it. Blackgate, for example, very good. Very close friends of the Oak Barrel. Blackgate Distillery out in Mandurin, just near Dubbo. You can have a 30-degree day, have a bonfire at night, then you go to bed and wake up and have to hit the pipes with a hammer because everything's frozen overnight. Now, 2 summers or 3 summers changes that whiskey dramatically. Not years, but summers. You could have and I think the summer element is the big point, which is something the Americans take claim to. So I think it's those sort of things.
It works very, very well in American whiskey. You're right.
Yeah. So like Milne, obviously you're at the coalface, back in the UK where these decisions are being made. Coming into Australia in the last 2 years, from an outsider's point of view, who wasn't around visiting distilleries, when Matt and I were for the first time, how do you think this should play out?
I think you're right. I mean, regional perspectives are pointless. It was, as you rightly said, it was a marketeer's decision, and it's in the same way that we've for years said that age is better, because we had a load of old stock and we had to sell it. And so these things come from adversity, and it's the case of we've got a problem. What's it's my role is as a marketeer. It's you go, right, we've got this thing that we need to address and fix. How do we resolve it? And at Starward, part of that mindset is how do we convince people that when they think of Australian whiskey, they don't think Tasmania? So they need to think Australian whiskey is Australian whiskey, not Tasmanian whiskey, because quite often, and I'm sure, Matt, you've seen this countless times before as well. As you say to someone, it's like, oh, this is an Australian whiskey. It's like, oh, so we're in Tasmania. You're making it. It's like,
Yeah,
we're not. We're making it Victoria.
Actually, Tasmania is an outlying state of New Zealand.
Andy, I'll just jump in there and say that actually it still surprises me the number of people that when you say Australian whiskey, they say, like just like you said, oh, Tasmania, we're in Tasmania, you're making it. But they think, and I say, oh, how many distilleries are there in Tasmania? And they'll say, oh, what, 4? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, sure.
That's a lot for Tasmania, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot for Tasmania.
That keeps the town busy.
Yeah. I guess, it's Sorry, as you were.
So I think, you know, this mindset of regionality in place is kind of pointless. What defines different, you know, you need to go back and go, what defines different styles of whiskey? What defines what its potential is versus what it is? And so, you know, you look at what regions, and not, you know, regions as a whole region, but what distilleries maybe are producing malt that is, you know, cooler climate that requires long aging, or with, you know, a lower diurnal temperature change, where you've got this, you know, much more lengthy aging process, versus, you know, anything in Victoria, which is, you know, 20 odd degrees difference in an average day. And so that's going to, you know, hot temperatures, you know, humidity will massively affect your maturation versus, and you know, you look at how they're doing in rum. We're talking about tropical aging versus the other aging that I've totally forgotten about.
They just call it
traditional. But it's that process, I think, is actually, that's what's defining the difference between one distillery versus the next. And the other factor is cask size. And I think for many, it's partly mainly due to size. You know, when I first went to a few distilleries in Chicago, they were the same. They had everything in
great distillery. Great distillery.
But they had everything in small casks. You know, everything was 100 liters. And I was like, why are you packing into 100 liters? And he's like, well, you know, I needed to get it aged quicker because I needed to get through some stock to give me the capital. I couldn't sit on this for.
I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I mean, it doesn't age it quicker. But yeah, okay, yeah.
I'm just going to stand on my stool here on the soapbox. And...
no. But is that mindset of sticking into a smaller cask, and you know, the maturation is different, but the maturation is generally perceived as being able to be bottled earlier than if you put it into a larger cask, because your interaction with wood is less, because there's less surface area to. Yeah, well, that's another day. But yeah, so that in itself makes a difference to it as well. So I think it is really hard because, as you say, you compare each different, and no one in Australia is playing by the same rules either. You know, you've got Starward doing, you know, everything in wine casks. You've got, you know, the next person that's doing it all in sherry casks. You've then got Archie Rose that are predominantly rye. You know, it's like, well, that's not you know, that's a completely different style of whiskey and kind of like category of whiskey, let alone regional. It's just like, geez,
100%.
My live stream last night was with Johnny Edwards from Lark.
Oh, do you do live streams, do you?
Oh, really?
Every single night, actually. There you go. Instagram, SMWS. So look, no,
you might get some fans from this, actually. You might get listeners.
No. My live stream last night was with Johnny Edwards, who's the distiller at Lark Distillery.
It's good that you have some decent blokes on your live stream every now and again.
Yeah.
The host a bit of a
Who's the one listener?
I asked this bloke called Scott Fitzsimons, but he's unavailable. Look, no, we
It costs too much.
No, and we had a chat about we talked a lot about local spirit, local distilleries, and different production processes, etc. There was one distillery that I didn't name, and I'm not going to name now, but that I encountered in Australia that are filling their casks at 40% ABV because they said, "Oh, well, it's Australian climates; it's definitely going to go up." And I said, "Well, that's a definite risk." And
there's also like quite. And I'm not a scientist or a
chemist. No, neither am I.
But there is, from what I gather, there is some quite key scientific and, you know, chemistry lessons why 63.5 works for Scotland.
Yeah.
And there's
it's humidity levels and
Yeah.
diurnal temperature. Yeah.
and 50% works in some cases in Australia, but I would be very
55 for Starward, if I'm not mistaken.
Spot on.
55. Going to catch up on a couple of Facebook comments here. Tattoo says, "G'day," and Tattoo,
All right.
mate, can we do some rum things like this as well, please? Let's make that happen. But drink whiskey right now. Ollie Maruda says, "Tim Duckett is all about the summers," which we agree. Crafty Field, good point. Different climates, different stills, different mash bills, different techniques, different casts, different people, etc., etc., etc. And I don't think I've seen anyone as excited and as much of a sponge for knowledge as Crafty Field was at a couple of tastings here at the Oak Barrel. One was DeRose Armagnac, but also your boy from Westwood, whose name I have just forgotten. You to shoey together. I'm sorry, mate. I hope you're not watching.
You guys have done shoeys together and you can't remember his name?
Yeah, no, it starts with an M.
Geez, I've met him so many times.
Yeah, me too. And anyway, he was talking about. I'm so sorry, mate. Hope this isn't live or anything. Yeah, can you help me out here, Milne? But like, just talk.
You mean Matt, the distiller at Westwood?
Matt Hoffman.
Yeah. Yeah, we did a stream with him. He's great.
Yeah. So we're talking about like the yeast strains, and Crafty was there just like absorbing it. And that's another reason why I think, unless you are Brooke Laddick or on the odd occasion Dr. Bill Lumsden, you're not talking about yeast strains and barley types and that sort of thing in Scotland. We're talking about a lot of them. America's talking about a lot of them. So I actually think, we have a lot of affiliation there. Joel Bradbury says you can't push a whole region like Tassie because they're not the only ones, because the styles differ so much, but there are some less quality spirits here as well. So how do they fit? Are they allowed to say that they have Tassie spirits if they don't make the spirit standard of spirit? Yes. Well, I've had some pretty average cognac that's called cognac, but I've had some great cognac that's called cognac. Same with champagne as well. If a GI comes in, as long as it fits the rules, doesn't matter the quality, you'll be able to fit in there. Rob Akers, I think you answered his question there. Mark Teague says the term small cask in Tassie refers to 20 litres typically, which Milne was sort of laughing at. 100 litre small cask in Australia, that's considered quite good. Joel Bradley wants another Boilermaker. He's got another Boilermaker tonight. He's got the chocolate porter, working very well with his Old Kempton Sherry TIB, which is another Tim Duckett creation, or Tim and Louis Duckett creation these days. Getting some chocolate notes of the whiskey, they're working really well with the porter. Jason Porter, funnily enough, I don't think his name comes from the beer. Good to see you guys live streaming via Zoom. G'day, Jason. How are you? Blah, blah, blah. Rob Akers said, yes, there are at least 1.8 of us watching tonight, Matt's stream. Could be 18, but I'm pretty sure there's a dot in there, 1.8.
Oh, I didn't actually see a dot there. Sorry. I think he said...
I did think that.
No, sorry.
Miles. That's something. Miles from...
Miles.
Westwood.
Okay,
yeah. So
long hair. Yeah.
And poor Crafty, I wasn't looking at the Facebook comments at this point in time. He's commented 3 times going, Miles, you bloody idiot.
All right. Oh, good.
Interesting comment from Peter Bignell saying, I've tasted some supposedly dodgy Nant casks that were filled in the low 40s, and they are beautiful. Not all of them. Nant.
Did you say Nant?
Nant.
We're in a post-Nant world.
Oh, sorry. No longer Nant casks. They're Nant casks.
So, and apparently they're not all of them, but they are beautiful. And again, another shout out to Peter here, because I know he's offered up some of his Bond space at his distillery for people who have had casks under that scheme that has gone a little bit tits up. So for people who haven't been able to sell them on quickly, and again,
thanks, Peter. That's really awesome, because the weathering some of the fallout of that was is very generous of you. Yeah, and so
that's incredible.
And and he's obviously still watching, but hasn't responded to the concept of coming on and talking to us still. He says that every other question apart from Peter and be on screen.
Go on.
Full circle. We were talking at the very start of tonight about like whiskies we rely upon. We go back to where I've had a couple of whiskies tonight. The palate's getting a little bit shot. I've been drinking cask strength, 60% Society hand sanitizer. And I just found myself subconsciously, I poured myself another twofold, because again, 40%, it's light, it's easy, it's sweet. Can we just do a around the grounds of what do we actually have in the glass at the moment?
I went back to the grain because I went from grain to blend to single cask. I went to a malt. I went to actually it's a Speyburn. So that one's just for you, Milne. A society Speyburn, and then I went.
Everyone's favourite salmon.
And then I've gone back to grain. So there's about half a dram left in that one.
I feel like we've all done a good curve because I did the same. I did my twofold, and then I went to Liberties, Oak Devil.
Which
and
Devil? That's the 5-year-old?
It's the 5-year-old, yeah. And then I went to a 21-year-old Ben Nevis.
Just for fun.
Kids and giggles.
So that was.
You didn't think about raising it or talking about it at the time?
Unbelievable. This guy.
You were just chatting too much shit that I didn't get involved. It was bottled for the 10-year anniversary of Whisky Show.
Cool.
So it was the Whisky Show that I worked on but didn't complete. So it's the first one in 9 years that I wasn't involved in. And yeah, so a bittersweet whiskey, but just a cracking whiskey at the same time. We just got some really good Ben Nevis casks back in those days, so very happy with that. And then I've gone back, is a bit of a harsh word, but I've gone sort of again to the fruitier, lighter style to Old Pulteney. Just a 12-year-old. It's just a good sitter. We're next to a grifter sour beer, so can't really go wrong with that pairing.
Winning.
Yeah. As I've seen, you've just responded to Matt Bailey. Peter Bignell has finally responded to our requests. Don't know how to join video. I've been too busy with Nantcast and sanitizer to work it out. We can help you. I know Kathleen knows a little bit about video. Kathleen from Nipper Curry.
We're going to get you. We'll get you on there. Don't worry, mate.
Yeah. I mean, I think the borders to Tasmania are closed, so I probably can't fly down there and do it myself. But we can talk you through it.
I had 3 events lined up in Tassie last week that all had to get kaput. What a shame. You know what? Would have loved it.
Yeah, it's it's interesting points, and I've had a lot of conversations about Whisky Fair in the past couple of weeks. But when's it's Whisky Show, isn't it? The Whisky Exchange one, really? Yeah. When was that generally happen during the year?
So it's the first week of October.
First week of October. And as far as you're aware, I mean, I don't know how many ties you have back there. It's still optimistic?
I think things that far ahead are not being postponed just yet. I think when it's generally manageable to that level, it's easier to a degree to manage it. So it's okay for now, but I mean, it's a nightmare for all of us. It's you're continuously looking at things 6 months down the line now and going, will that happen? Is this going to be the case? Some of our brands that we were predominantly doing a sampling plan for the year, we've had to go, okay, so where we had invested all this money in doing sampling and in-store very sort of activity, have to cancel that now. And that's the best way to engage with people is face to face and trying to liquid. So how do you then replicate that in another form that's as successful is a lot more challenging. And from my side as well, you kicking off your virtual whiskey tastings next week, is it? Or was it this week?
Tuesday's our first one.
Tuesday.
So the last,
so a week today.
the last of the packages going to Sydney CBD and stuff will go out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything that needed to go out has gone out today. So that was quite. And do you know, I'm playing at home. It's going to be this format essentially. So you'll have various panelists. You can jump in on the Zoom and ask questions. You can sit on the Facebook or the YouTube and ask questions as well. So, but yeah, this is how it's going to play out a bit. But it's interesting. And there's just a comment there from Tim Good on the Facebook that really hope the Whisky Spirit events gets crammed into the end of the year. And it's something I've been thinking about because the Whisky Fair is the last weekend of August. Now, every other major drinks event, whether it's whiskey or not, you're talking about Gabs in beer, Sydney Good Food and Wine Show, which is a behemoth, the Fairfax show, are all pushing back to August, September, October. It is going to be unbelievably busy. And so we're talking about booze here. What about other events? Music festivals,
Yeah.
sporting events. Everyone's going to try and cram in. And people who, like myself, who like live music, who like booze events, who like sporting events, all of a sudden, they're all going to be on the same weekend. So it's a really interesting thing from our point of view as well. And like talking to people, because Whisky Fair planning was all gung-ho until about 6 weeks ago. I had as many as 5 single casks for the fair on the boil.
Yep.
There's one we've already committed to and paid for, so that's going to arrive hell or high water. Other ones we're just going to have to sit back and wait because we don't know. But also, if you have to think about, and this is something I guess for everyone who is interested in these events and who's running these events, if we get the all clear tomorrow, hypothetically, I can't run an event on Friday because you need to sell tickets. You need a lead-in point. So you can't sell tickets.
And the bigger the event, the longer the lead.
100%. And you can't sell tickets with the anticipation of an all clear. Until that all clear comes through, you go, and I think it's going to be very unlikely that, government and the people who are much smarter than me working in the health departments go, in 4 weeks' time, we're going to go back to normal, because that's not a smart way to do things, right? From their point of view. So if the all clear is in the first week of August, can I sell tickets to a Whisky Fair at the end of August? Yeah. Maybe, but in the climate of everything going through. So there's all these things to play out. Yet again, Rob Akers said, getting a venue. Yep. Luckily enough, we have our venue here at the Oak Barrel. As long as we can trade through this, we'll be all right. But so there's all these, machinations to play out that we are not particularly sure of, that I don't think too many people are thinking about in terms of like the global picture. And that's, hopefully what the roundtable, I think what it's, designed to do is give, consumers a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what we're dealing with. And because I've had a lot of questions about Whisky Fair, and it's August, it'll be fine. It's like, it might not. If we have to, there'll be some very, very tough conversations. If we get into mid-July and things aren't back to normal, do we skip a year?
And it's really tough because you've got, as you say, the consumer side and then the trade side as well. So, your example of Whisky Show for me in the UK, straight off the back of finishing the Whisky Show, we'd wrap up, we'd get through Christmas because no one wants to talk to you at Christmas. And then January, it's like, okay, let's sell the space. And you probably sell 80% of the space, depending on whether you expand or not. So 80% would go in the first couple of months. So at this stage, space should be sold and booked and arranged. And then you arrange the people. And a show like the Whisky Show, you're asking distillery managers from across the world. I think the last year that we did it, Shinji Fukuyo was there. Who's the old mate from Nika nowadays? Tatsuri.
Kevin Griffiths lives in Melbourne.
Kevin Griffith. I was about to say.
But we had the distillery manager for Nika, for Suntory, and for Chitrabu traveled across. The guys generally, both Pulteney and Amrut and Rampur all send people from India, and from the States who are always pushing to get people from America across. And so, getting into those people's calendars is a huge challenge in the first place. And now you're kind of a case of, well, now everything is moving and changing. Are we now on a priority list? Are we now on how important? You almost work out where you are in the pecking order, because it's sort of a case of, will you still hold the place for me? Or are you holding us open just in case something better comes along that they feel like they should be going to instead? And then, at the same time, you've got people that travel to other events, travel to these events from other cities and other places. So in Europe, travel is quite cheap, and it's very affordable to fly from London to Paris, from London to Brussels, from London to Berlin. It's, you can pick up a cheap flight with very little difficulty. Here, your audience that's coming from Melbourne to Sydney, from Brisbane to Sydney, it's actually a lot more expensive to leave that last minute. And so you want to be booking that in advance and early, because it's not a cheap thing to be doing. So,
and look,
we had to cancel the champs this year, as I've told Scotty already, and Andy,
Can I just comment on that in a second, Matt? I just want to get a Facebook, but I do want to talk about the champs and what that means for that.
that's all right. That's all right.
But 100%, and I've been sugarcoating it a little bit. Peter Bignell has commented, and he's come up with a great zinger just then, so I'll get to that in a second. But I think there are too many people out there not doing enough social distancing, so I very much doubt large events will be operating by August. And I've been sugarcoating this, and I guess on a live stream at 9:30 on the 1st of April, it's not April Fool's, I will be surprised if Whisky Fair Sydney happens this year. We will do everything we can to make it happen, 100%.
Yep.
And we did our 10th anniversary last year, and it was a great celebration. This point in time, I'll be very surprised if it happens. And even if I can run it, can I get people from Tasmania, from interstate, from Western Australia at that last minute, as you were saying, Milne? Probably not. So there's also a concern there about, do I run a Whisky Fair that isn't up to Whisky Fair standards? That is not just me the last 6 years running it. It's up to what Dave did prior to me. It's up to what Joel and Simon did before Dave. Do I want to put the Oak Barrel name to that, or do we just draw the line underneath it? So, I mean, I do have many, many bottles of whiskey already, coming out of cask and being bottled that I'm going to have to get rid of somewhere. So I think, Peter, you've probably hit the nail on the head there, is that, we're obviously, we're being very, very positive. We're drinking, we're being happy. But at this point in time, I'd be very surprised if it happened. And then he also comes down with another zinger. And Matt, this might lead into an event that you had planned this year. Matt, what are you doing with your hands while they're off screen? You're using so much hand sanitizer. And it's true, because there's no one else there that's going to infect the bottles that you've already picked up.
It's a nervous tick at this point. I've got this hand sanitizer pump on my desk, and I keep wanting to use it.
Can you please turn off the other screens you have going right now? On this one?
Or just camera down slightly. I don't know what's worse, camera down or hands up.
I can move anything you like.
It's all coming from the same place, mate.
But
here's a reality of an event that happens every 2 years. That we spoke about an event. We got a comment, when are we going to do society oak barrel tastings together?
Yeah,
and we'd spent a lot, and we found the perfect one to do.
We did.
And
look, I mean, as many know, I mean, the Oak Barrel have been heavily involved with the Whisky Champs every 2 years. And the Whisky Championships, the Australian Malt Whisky Tasting Championship, has been running now for 30 years. And so this was 2020 was the 30th anniversary of that championship. Even Andy and I were talking about being involved with it this year as well, which would have been fantastic. We are postponing that until we have a date lined up. But I'll be completely honest with you right now, it is looking like 2021. And like you, Scotty, like with the Whisky Fair, I've already got a full cask committed. I've already bottled. We've already bottled a full cask, which has a 30th anniversary special edition cask that was bottled for society members, committed to that purpose. So yes, everyone's going to feel the pinch a bit. It's all going to be sort of like we have to repurpose and repivot and create what we can out of this example. So the champs will be back. It'll be bigger than ever, as always. We always send people to Scotland and give away lots of whiskey and have good fun with it. But it's always a massive party, and Scotty collects all the name tags as always. So and
save your name tags.
Save your name tags, otherwise Scotty will pinch it off your body somewhere. Don't worry.
When Scotty comes last, and can I just give another shout out to the team at Whisky and Ailments for what they've done with the juice bags that have been selling whiskies, but also to Brooke Heyman, who now gets another year as the reigning Scotch whisky tasting champion. And also, what's very important about that, and you don't see that when you just see the press release that says Brooke Heyman is the Scotch whisky tasting champion of Australia, is she had to sit on my table. And if you sat on my table during the Scotch whisky champs, I talk a lot of shit, and I get bored about 3 minutes in, and I just try and make fun and flick whiskey at people and do all that sort of stuff. She had to deal with that and still won. That's how good she is.
There's a particular moment from the last champs, which was 2018, that I want to make reference to right now, was that when I had to walk around with Susie, Danelle, Tamara, everyone who was collecting all the answer forms that you'd all filled out. And there's one person I walked past and collected the answer form off, which was Brooke, and she said under her breath, she goes, "Don't look at it; they're all wrong." And she ended up winning.
She must have had my form then.
Wait, were you supposed to win?
Yeah.
No, but she said, "Oh, they're all wrong. Don't look at it; they're all wrong." I said, "Oh, okay." And then
which is a pretty baller move, knowing that you've got all of it right.
Well,
don't look at this wrong. Turn it upside down because I know I've got them all right.
You got 5 out of 8.
Let no one copy me.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Are we going to see handouts of distillery hand sanitizer at whiskey shows now? Rob Akers, yes, 100%. I think, and this is the new world we live in, where there will be hand sanitizer and things. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on global pandemics, but probably fair to say this is a bit of a wake-up call. And so moving forward, there'll be a few more precautions put into place just in general for any big public gathering. Marco Grezza, can we have 2 whiskey fairs next year? Marco, I'm ahead of you. Remember that thing we spoke about in the back room, that other thing? It's called Festival of Whisky, which I might own the name to in Australia. We might do that in Whiskey Fair next year, particularly if we can't wait. We're going to do both this year. Festival of Whisky is definitely done. Whiskey Fair's up in the air, but if we definitely don't get Whiskey Fair off this year, we're going to do both next year. Yep. You know exactly what I'm talking about there. Rob Akers loves conference merch. He's going to collect all the hand sanitizer. What about Aussie Craft Sanitizer Show? Yep, we can do single cast strength hand sanitizer bottled for Whiskey Fair. I promise you that.
Just queue up to wash your hands.
And working at that point.
Breaking news: Caleb Chan has confirmed, or can confirm. He's just heard from Whiskey Name on Instagram. They are now shipping interstate, so they've sorted that. So anyone who was asking the question before, Whiskey Name
can
now
there you go. That's excellent.
ship interstate.
Yeah.
Mark Teague says, better not be April Fools. I think Mark Teague might have asked that question at the start. Yeah, only one way to find out. Caleb, friend, you saw the New South Wales. So that's good news. And a big g'day. I know they're very close to what you guys do with the society.
Yeah, they are. Whiskey and Helmet are a king hit partner for us, and they're going to be actually distributing some of the April out term, which is being released this Friday.
Fucking heartbreaking for that bar to have to let people go.
They had to let go their casuals, which is just absolutely the worst thing ever. They've got, it's just it is heartbreaking. You've got the word right.
Yeah. Look, I mean, here at the Oak, but we're not immune to that. We've let staff go, and we've culled our hours quite a bit. We're not the sort of bottle store you back the ute up to and load up on 20 cases of VB. But you know, we're cautious. We can trade. And we need to think up creative ways to trade in this period. So we're cautiously optimistic that we can get through this. If I catch the virus tomorrow, we would need to close for 2 weeks. So that's the biggest worry for us in terms of having that. And it could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 6 months' time. You know, you never know. So that's just something hanging over our heads. But you know, we're cautiously optimistic, and we also can't complain because we can still trade. There's so many of our friends and you probably, well, we all know it. We're all friends with a lot of people in hospitality. It's just rug pulled, gone. And, you know, friends, yes, friends of ours, but like, you know, particularly, obviously in Sydney, I speak for the Sydney market a little bit more than anywhere else. Not just great bartenders, but some of the world's best bartenders and bar owners are now looking at the possibility of standing next to, Qantas engineers and Centrelink lines, which is unfathomable 12 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's, the chance of getting out of it is, it's just a horrible mindset. And it's, bars that have opened in the last 24 months that are incredible bars, just easy favorites, incredible places that, we all love going to and drinking at. It's heartbreaking to know that they're kind of, even more closer probably to the shit, what's going to happen, how am I set up? Because I think the more established businesses have got a bit more to them and a bit more backing and probably a longer relationship with their landlords and all that stuff as well, where they can probably, there's just a bit more room for negotiation. But when you've been there for less than 12 months, you're really struggling to negotiate.
a guest we're hoping to have on next week, Alex Darlenberg from the Speakeasy Group. You know, open a shit hot bar in Sydney.
Yeah.
Kiss, kiss, bang, bang. I only got to go there once. Sorry, twice. I only remember once, but twice I was there. And then to have the rug pulled, brand new bar, new fit out, try new ideas. And ask the question. Can I give a quick shout out to someone, a bloke called Craig Reedy, who's been an attendee on the Zoom chat, basically since about 5 minutes in. He's probably fallen asleep listening to our shit last while. But if you're there, Craig, give us a yell, because you've got stamina putting through us, listening to us for the whole time. Crafty Field, lots of creative thinking happening at the moment. And yeah, that's 100% true. Like, we've been dealt this hand, and whether we are in this industry or other industries, like events industries completely. I've got a lot of old friends, as I know you do, Matt, and then actually Andy as well. You know a lot of people in the music industry from your time starting that sort of carry on. That's gone. So, you know, all industries are in this together. And I think, again,
it's interesting. Go on, Karen.
Just to pick up on something before, like we've been harping on about how much whiskey is a social drink, and what you were saying about the shows is you want to be in front of people, and that's now been legally, like, it's against the law to go up to more than one person and say, hey, g'day, you want to try this? It's sort of hard to fathom sometimes. Yeah.
No, it's you take away that face-to-face interaction and that sort of that physical connection. Yeah, it's as much as, you know, we're talking about the amazing stuff of bottled cocktails and you know, drinks to your door from all these great bars and distilleries and whatnot. But part of the thing that's special is that bartender. It's that welcome that you get from a bar. You know, the first time I came to, not the first time, so when I first moved here 2 years ago, I remember, you know, I was unemployed. I needed to understand the bar industry of Australia, and so I was like, well, I shouldn't be doing this, and I can't afford to do this, but I kind of need to go out and drink in these bars to, you know, because this is going to come up in an interview of what's your favorite bar in Australia, or what's, you know, what do you like about the bar scene? It's like, if I just sit there and go, oh, I don't know, I went to the local RSL and that was pretty good, you know. So I was like, I have to invest this time and money, and so I did this while my wife was at work, and so I was drinking on my own in random bars, and
while the wife was at work, paying for you to go out drinking.
Yeah, she's. I timed this at the point that she's left the room.
Did she have a sister at all?
different countries. It's fine. But it is that thing of, you know, there's certain bars you go into it and there's a hook and there's a pull, and Rover is exactly one of those bars, you know, that I walked into. I was like, I can stay here for 3 hours, and, you know, I don't feel like a lemming at the end of a bar. Just, you know, I don't feel like the bar staff are going, this guy's a problem, you know, he's a bit weird. You know, they were just like, hey, do you want to chat? Do you want to talk? Come on in, welcome us. And Rambling Rascals is the same, Charlie's bar. You know, he's
100%.
He just made you feel welcome and at home. It's like, this is it's exactly in the word, it's hospitality. And the service level is delivered to us, but the thing that we fame them for, the thing that they are great at, is hospitality. You know, it's how are we going to get back to that? Well, let's just hope we do.
But also, like, I think the hint is in the name, hospitality. You know, it's being hospitable, being welcoming. Yep. You guys know I've got no friends, but, you know, bartenders pretend to be my friend because that's their job.
You pay us to be that with James.
I pay you for money for drinks, and you pretend to be my friend. That's excellent. So it's going to take
we get it as a charity rebate. It's great.
Yeah. Particularly if I've been at your bar, you definitely. I think there's a special line for Centrelink if Scotty's been to your bar. Yeah. A couple of things happening, and David MK, very good friend of the Oak Barrel, and if you do need some Aussie whiskey, obviously the Oak Barrel's here, but the Old Barrel House is another great online store, and he makes a very, very good point, is that shout out to all the small Aussie distilleries doing extremely tough at the moment, and this is something, want to talk about. And I've done tastings in, Dubbo and Orange and that sort of thing, where I've gone, I promise you, in town, we are pushing people out to you after the fires, after the scare of that people won't go into regional areas. We're pushing them out. Now we're saying, don't go to regional areas because they don't have the facilities to deal with it. So, and it's everyone's hurting, but my heart does break for these small towns. It's like, okay, finally the fires are out and our world is not on fire. We can get tourists back again. Actually, no, because they might kill the entire population if we catch it. So I honestly don't know the answer to that one at the moment. Just if you're regional, I fucking hope you hold on. We'll be there as soon as we can, putting some money in. Joel Brebry says, Spring, you missed the first hour. Will we be able to rewatch anywhere? Yep, no, this will, as soon as we finish this will be available on Facebook and the YouTube to rewatch. Good thing about a Boilermaker, technically have had 2 drinks and still feel like I've had 6. Joel Brebry, well done. Excellent. That's self-isolation at its finest. Peter Bignell, doing a bit of guerrilla marketing. Who says that marketing's a game for 18-year-olds? Guerrilla marketing warning. If you go to the Belgrove online store, 15% off with the code isolation, no postage as usual. I have some Belgrove stock up the back there. You can maybe see it in the background there. Yep. But at times like this, I have absolutely no issues with going directly to the distillery and giving them the lion's share of their money. We will continue to support the distributors where we can. It's a week-to-week basis for us, whether I've got any money to spend or whether we need to fire the wine department. Joe's just sitting around the corner there. So
he's fired.
Yeah, you're fired, Joe. See you later. But if that's a pretty good offer. 15% off for anything from the Belgrove store with free shipping, as always. I'm pretty sure it's belgrove.com.au. You've got Google, figure it out. But isolation. Rob Akers, anything more we can do to support from interstate in terms of the oak barrel, or just like, honestly, I don't know what business you're talking about there, but whether it's the oak barrel or the society or a small bar or anything, look for small business because these are the ones that are struggling at the moment. We've gone from a workforce of 6 to 5. So, there's, when you talk about skeleton staff to get through this sort of stuff, there's not much room to grow. And I'm talking from my experience, but obviously there's a lot of businesses out there doing the same. Good news from Mark Teague. His cart option at Whisky and Ale web store now accepts his Tasmanian address. So Get on that. Rob Akers jumps in, get on the Boilermaker pack. And Craig Reedy, he's here. Hey guys, still here. They have been in and out over the 2 hours. Great chat, super approachable for whiskey binners like me, mate. Thank you so much, Craig. Hopefully we've entertained you a bit. It's been great to have you across the tasting and good to hear from you. Joel Bradbury, chat must be a bit weird. Can't see half these comments you're reading out. Yeah, it's the Facebook thing. If you change it from most relevant to, latest, I think it is, you'll be fine. But yeah, I'm going to let you in a secret here, Joel. All the ones about Scott being good looking and oak barrels.
Here we go.
May have made that up. May have made them up. They may not have happened. But definitely the ones about Matt Bailey being a bit of a wanker, they were all true. Definitely there.
Thanks. Always appreciated. Thanks, guys.
We set out to do an hour.
And now we're at
2 hours and 15 minutes.
2 hours 15. God.
That's good.
Should we push for 2.5 hours?
I'm done.
You're done. Look, the numbers have been, really steady across the whole stream. I want to give a big thank you to Matt Bailey and to Milne, particularly for coming up with the idea. I think he was mainly bored, but
got to give him something to do.
So we ran this through the oak barrel because that's what I had available and that's what the system was set up for. I've no objection to the whiskey roundtable moving to other platforms and that sort of stuff. Matt, I investigated pushing it through the society group, but I need to be an admin, I think. So
I'll add you in. Look, I'm happy to.
I don't know if I can give you the permissions or something, but we can figure that out.
Work it out. It'd be good to get you through the society members as well. Exactly.
Yeah. But any last thoughts? Any last comments around the grounds?
Nothing from me. I really appreciate this, guys. I really appreciate it. It's great to be able to catch up with you digitally like this, and to be able to us to be able to articulate some of our thoughts, unlike those words I was up, but I was just saying this then, but articulate thoughts to a group of people who are interested in what we're doing and really creating something special here. So thank you again.
Yeah, no, I'd kind of reiterate the same. It's great to chat. It's good to see your faces, and with people from around the world. You know, people like John Eastman, who, you know, him and I used to work together in London 7-8 years ago. So yeah, it's lovely to connect with people in a very different way that actually means you can chat. But, you know, I think together the three of us are a mighty set of geeks in what we do. But yeah.
I'll take geek.
But, you know, but in that there's a lot of, you know, mindsets and thoughts that we have that everyone else does. And so I think, you know, sometimes our debates are probably exactly the same as debates of people that are new to whiskey and starting a whiskey. The arguments that you can develop on are different. But I think, you know, there's a level of, you know, when you do a presentation to a group of people, you're imparting education and you're imparting wisdom onto those people, or facts and stories and things. And that's what, you know, a role of an ambassador is very much driven by, is, you know, engaging them, getting them excited about your products and your brands. But it's really rare that we get the opportunity to just chat and talk to customers. You know, you and I do this in a bar very frequently, but you know, you don't get to talk to people in such a sort of a wide scheme where you're actually going, actually, this is our opinions on the industry, this is our opinions on the state of play, this is where I think this world is going and moving to. Because, you know, that gets a very small amount of time in a talk, because you know, you're there to talk about what the customers have paid to be there to listen to and taste. So yeah, I think it's really actually a great time to just, you know, and it's, you know, I'm very fortunate. I don't have to be brand driven. People probably don't know I'm doing this, so it's fine.
Says the bloke with a Starward shirt who's been smashing Starward on Pulteney all night.
Custom made as well, can I tell you? This is
here we go.
It was
Did
a
David Tarley sign your black shirt in black texture on the back there?
Yeah. Just my bollock. No, it's it was a t-shirt. They said, "Oh, we've got this new idea for a t-shirt," and the company that was printing it completely screwed it up, and the sizing just didn't work. And so they sort of completely pulled back on it and never made it again, and went back to the old design. So I was like, sweet. So every now and then I get people saying, "Oh, where can I get your t-shirt from?" It's like, you can't. So it's my gloat. But no, it's great to chat in a more broader context that, you know, this level of conversation doesn't happen typically.
Yeah, and look, I want to thank you guys again a lot for, you know, dedicating, you know, 2 hours from 2.5 hours since we're getting to now is a long time. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you, Milne, for coming up with the idea. But also, I think from our point of view, being in the industry, this is very much a conversation we would have at the Rover or at Old Mates or at somewhere, and it's such I'm going to say it's a joy to be able to let people into this conversation and sort of say, you know, welcome us. And we're doing a lot of virtual tastings at the moment, and we're sending, you know, packages to places like Dubbo and Young, let alone Western Australia, Hobart, South Australia, Queensland, to sort of involve themselves in the Oak Vale experience. And I think just from the feedback tonight, for, you know, I'm not going to read them all out, but there's, you know, a lot of people saying some very nice things. People like Ali, who I think might be coming into our tasting soon, maybe not. But yeah, so like a lot of really good feedback from that. But guys, if you're on the Facebook or the Zoom or the YouTube tonight, honestly, if you want to jump on the Zoom and have a question, say, we'll put you on screen as well. Like it could be cool. I think the three of us might be locked in, but we could have a rotating cast of, you know, 2 or 3 special guests. Peter Boone, people like Alex, who we're hoping to have next week, all that sort of stuff, just to talk rubbish about whiskey. And I think it's a point that Crafty made earlier tonight is that, and it's an old phrase, it's a cliche, but it's being thrown out at the moment. Times of great disruption cause great innovation. And we were talking about this before, but the oak barrel, we've been talking about this for a little while about how do I get, we sell at all our whiskey tastings, how do I get that to a bigger audience? And we were thinking about how can I put a camera in the middle of the room that's not going to get interrupted by sound and that sort of stuff so I can stream it. And this is just forced us to go, well, you can't have a room full of people. You have to go virtual. And I think same with you, Matt, and whatever's going on.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool. And Crafty, you are definitely invited in, Joel Bradbury, in my pajamas with my dog sitting on my lap. Joel, that assumes that any one of us is wearing pants, which we're definitely not. This is a pants-free zone. But I do want to give a big shout out to both Matt and Andy for
thanks, Scotty.
Big shout out to donating their time, and a big shout out to everyone who is
thanks for listening.
Hospitality industry.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of it, everyone.
And anyone of my friends, and I've seen a couple of people chime in who from the music industry as well, which has also been decimated. If anyone wants to talk at any point in time, give us a yell. You've all got my number, or you've got my Facebook. Send us a message. We can get on Zoom. We can talk shit, because it's pretty tough. We're very positive people, and hopefully this stream was very positive. And as the most positive person in the world, I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling it as well. I'm feeling a bit stressed about things, and am I going to be the arsehole that kills the oak barrel after 64 years? You know, these sort of things are coming into our minds, as I'm sure everyone else is. But if anyone else feels like they need to have a chat, please come and say good day virtually, and we can make that happen. I'm sure both Andy and Matt would agree with that, and they're more than happy to do that, because let's be honest, they got nothing to do on a good day, let alone in global pandemics.
This guy, unbelievable. You know what?
Punchlines for days.
Yeah, you know what? Fine, you can take that one. That's yours to end with.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, I don't know what next week holds, but I'm free on Wednesday. You guys free on Wednesday?
Yeah. No, we're yours.
7:30 on Wednesday. Let's do it.
Next Wednesday night.
Because I got Tuesday nights. There's some Wednesdays I got tastings on, but next week it's only Tuesday. So
yeah, Wednesday
night.
Let's lock it in. Do it.
Wednesday night, 7:30, Whiskey Roundtable. Thank you very much. We love you all.
We've got a few guests, as Scotty said, and we're looking forward to taking some more questions. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Also, boys, it might take me a little while to turn this off, so don't fucking swear for the next little while I try and unengage all the live streams.